Chapter 18. Tang Tian was not the only one who had this thought. The others were the same. They were all shocked by Yi Shang's shout. The two youths who fell were caught by the Medicine Valley's flying monsters and brought to Chu Ling Shao and the others. I don't accept this. A youth walked a few steps in front of Chu Ling Shao and said. What? Chu Ling Shao smiled and asked the youth. Even if he didn't attack others, he still affected me. The youth looked at Night Sorrow's figure on Dan Ding Cliff and said. He's not using any sound wave techniques, he's just roaring to cheer himself on. It can't be considered an attack. What's your name? If you don't want to give up, you can keep climbing. Half an hour has already passed, so you still have a chance. Chu Ling Shao still had a smile on his face. He was also surprised by Yi Shan's shout and jumped in fright. Disciple Chu Ning, disciple will go now. Chu Ning bowed to Chu Ling Shao and quickly ran to Dan Ding Cliff to continue climbing. This kid's attitude is not bad. Senior Chu, his surname is also Chu. Yi Shui looked at Chu Ling Shao and said with a smile. Ha! He's my big brother's youngest son. I met him a few years ago, but I forgot his name. Chu Ling Shao said with a smile. Just as they were talking, Night Sorrow, who had climbed more than 50 meters, stopped for a moment. He roared again and rushed up again. Damn, what's this kid doing? Is he done yet? The group of examinees who were focused on facing the pressure were shocked by Night Sorrow, but no one fell. Chu Ning, who had caught up, laughed. Continue, I'll scare these guys to death. Night Sorrow roared again and rushed up 50 meters. At this time, he was not far from 2,000 meters, but the highest he climbed was already 2,300 meters, and his condition was much better than Night Sorrow's. After a pause, Night Sorrow roared again and rushed forward, but the distance was shorter each time. Senior Brother Chu, how high do you think this little brat can climb? Yi Shui asked Chu Ling Shao. Around 2,300 to 2,500. His cultivation limits him too much, Chu Ling Shao said after some thought. Can it reach 2,500? If he can reach 2,500, he can definitely pass next year after cultivating for a year. The only female representative among the representatives of the peaks, Tang Qianqian, said. That's for sure. Chu Ling Shao nodded. It can't be 2,500. Either it's more than 3,000, or it falls and doesn't get any results. Yu Yangyu, who spoke for the first time today, said. H the most. New percent I chapter square root or supra asterisk d dollar, I don't know where this strange kid came from. With him around, this apprenticeship ceremony is really interesting. Yen Bei Bei agreed with Yu Yangyu's words. Night Sorrow was not the kind of person who would give up halfway. The bloody handprints on the rocks behind him were proof of his ruthlessness. The youths who had rushed to 2,500 meters all found stone platforms to rest. Night Sorrow was now at 2,300 meters. After climbing a few steps, Night Sorrow had to stop to catch his breath. The higher he climbed, the greater the pressure. By the time Yi Shang had climbed to 2,500 meters, the others had already climbed to 2,600 meters. Although it was only 100 meters, the other 8th and 7th layer Qi refinement cultivators had already climbed for almost an hour to reach this distance. At 2,500 meters, Night Sorrow went to the platform and took out a small deerskin pouch. He drank a mouthful of strong wine and recovered his strength. Even on the platform, it was not easy. The pressure from the top of the mountain did not stop. Wave after wave of pressure assaulted him, as if it would not stop until Night Sorrow was pushed down. After resting for a while, Night Sorrow stood up and took out the black iron spear from his back. He slashed his arms twice and poured all the wine from the deerskin pouch onto his arms and hands. What is he doing? Seeing Night Sorrow's actions, the faces of the spectators changed. Tang Qianqian even stood up. Sigh, this test is too cruel for him. He used too much strength and his arms should be numb. He's using pain to find his senses. Yi Shui lamented. While they were talking, Night Sorrow let out a low roar once again and quickly climbed upwards. This time, he charged upwards for over 30 meters. After stopping, he rested his head on the stone wall for a while. Then, he roared again and continued to climb forward. However, the distance he climbed was getting shorter and shorter. It seemed like there were demonic beasts fighting on Danding Cliff. Low roars could be heard constantly. These were Night Sorrow's roars, unyielding roars. By the time Night Sorrow reached 2,600 meters, the others had already reached 2,700 meters. More than 10 people had already given up, and a few of them had fallen down. Night Sorrow, give up if you can't do it. Try again next year. Tang Tian, who was tens of meters above Yi Shang, shouted as he looked at Yi Shang, whose arms were dripping with blood and whose hair was soaked in sweat. Night Sorrow, who was panting, shook his head. I don't admire many people, but you are one of them. Chu Ning, who had caught up and was now standing shoulder to shoulder with Night Sorrow, said. I'm sorry for hurting you. After saying this, Night Sorrow continued to climb. After 3 hours, the highest one had already reached 2,900 meters. Night Sorrow was also not far from 2,800 meters. At this moment, he had to expend all of his strength just to climb a single step. However, more than 10 people at 2,900 meters were in the same situation as Night Sorrow. Every step was extremely difficult. 4 hours later, more than 10 people reached the 3,000 mark. These people began to meditate and rest after reaching the 3,000 mark. They did not continue climbing. This was their limit. Looking at the situation, it was unlikely that more than 30 people could reach the 3,000 mark. One by one, they gave up and fell down. The number of people left on Danding Cliff was decreasing. At 2,900 meters, Night Sorrow saw Tang Tian. Good job. Come, let's do it together. Tang Tian was also in a sorry state. He had just entered the 8th level of Qi refining stage. After climbing for 2,900 meters, he had exhausted all the energy in his body. Night Sorrow, don't give up. Let's go. Chu Ning, who had been standing shoulder to shoulder with Night Sorrow, shouted loudly. Time slipped away bit by bit. Yi Shang's group was getting closer and closer to the 3-kilometer platform. However, there were fewer and fewer people taking the test. Apart from the 23 people who had already reached the platform, the others had either fallen off or given up. These 23 people were either in the 8th or peak of the 7th level of Qi refining. Work hard. Don't give up. Following the shout of a young man on the platform, the others also began to cheer for them. Keep going. Again. The shouts got louder and louder. Fortunately, the platform was a special area on Danding Cliff. The pressure was relatively low. Otherwise, all of them would have fallen down. In the end, it was not only the young men taking the test who were shouting, but also the spectators at the bottom of Danding Cliff. Yi Shang used what little true qi he had left in his body and charged towards the 3,000-meter platform. The 6 hours were getting closer and closer. Night Sorrow, Tang Tian, and Chu Ning were getting closer and closer to the platform. Good. This is the spirit that our Medicine Valley needs. Chu Lingxiao was excited. Chapter 19. As the 3 hours approached, Night Sorrow and the other two reached the 3,000-meter platform. Go! Chu Ning shouted at Night Sorrow. You guys go first. Night Sorrow did not even have the strength to lift his hand. Chu Ning grabbed onto a rock on the 3,000-meter platform. His body was like an earthworm. He wriggled twice before climbing up. Tang Tian was the same as Chu Ning. His posture was ugly. He grabbed onto the rock and climbed onto the 3,000-meter platform. Night Sorrow used his left hand to hold onto the rock and used his right hand to grab onto the platform. His left hand continued to support his body as he climbed onto the platform. When his body landed on the stone platform, Yishang's mind relaxed and he fainted. When Yishang fainted, his body tilted and slid down the stone platform. At this moment, Tang Tian and Chu Ning, who were closest to Yishang, had no strength in their bodies and could not hold on to Yishang. The unconscious Night Sorrow was like a bird with broken wings. He slid down from the 3,000-meter platform. This scene shocked everyone. Fortunately, a law enforcement disciple from the Medicine Valley rode on a black eagle and caught Night Sorrow. Then, other law enforcement disciples came to catch the disciples who passed the test. Chu Ling Xiao went to Night Sorrow and squatted down to feed Night Sorrow a pill. Then, he patted Night Sorrow's back twice. Night Sorrow opened his eyes and sat up. "Don't get up. Recover first." Chu Ling Xiao nodded at Night Sorrow. Then, Chu Ling Xiao announced the results of the test. A total of 26 people passed. They were the 23 people who climbed onto the 3,000-meter platform: Night Sorrow, Tang Tian, and Chu Ning. "Senior Chu, didn't you say that it's better to have nothing than to have something substandard? If you can't climb to 3,000 m, you can't be recruited." He didn't succeed. Lu Jing pointed at Night Sorrow and said to Chu Ling Xiao. It was no secret in the Medicine Valley that he did not get along well with Chu Ling Xiao. If there was a chance to refute Chu Ling Xiao, Lu Jing would not let go of it. Night Sorrow was just a sacrifice. "Senior brother Lu, how can you say that Night Sorrow didn't go up? There should still be a bloody handprint on it," Tang Qianqian said as she glanced at Night Sorrow, whose arms and hands were being bandaged by the disciples of the Medicine Valley. "Alright, these 26 people are the ones who passed the assessment this year. Ling Xiao, Taishan Peak hasn't recruited new people for more than 10 years. I, Taishan Peak, want these 26 people." Yu Yangyu, who had been sitting all this time, stood up. "Third senior brother, that's not good. No matter what, we can't take them all away. Wouldn't it be a waste of our trip?" Hearing Yu Yangyu's words, Yan Beiji was not willing. The disciples who passed the assessment this time were too outstanding. Yan Beiji did not want to let them go. In the past, the third round of the assessment was 15 laps, and the fourth round was 2,500 meters. This year's assessment was harsh, but the selected disciples were also outstanding. Besides, it was appropriate to insist at this time, and it would not hurt his relationship with Yu Yangyu. "That's right, Martial Uncle. You have to give us some," Chu Lingxiao said. F latest chapter C % section Z previous 9 _ alright, each of you can take one. You can't touch the other 3. Yu Yangyu waved his sleeve and brought Night Sorrow, Tang Tian, and Chu Ning behind him. Yu Yangyu's behavior made the representatives of the other peaks speechless. Although Night Sorrow and the other two's cultivation were not the highest, their endurance and perseverance were obviously better than the others. "Third senior brother, I want 5. Of course, Yan Beiji would not accept only 1. 3. If you don't want them, I'll take all of them." Yu Yangyu glanced at Yan Beiji. Then, he waved his sleeve and brought the 13 disciples who passed the assessment behind him. Seeing Yu Yangyu's actions, Yan Beiji was so angry that his beard trembled. Then, he picked 3 and left with the Qin Zhen and the 3 newcomers. Yu Yangyu also left Danding Cliff with the remaining 13 people. "Senior brother Chu, this third martial uncle is too overbearing. He took away more than half of them." Tang Qianqian said with dissatisfaction. The disciples who passed this year's assessment are too outstanding. Taishan Peak is already strong. Sigh. Chu Lingshao was also helpless. He did not even manage to get his own nephew. He was speechless, but he was also happy. Yu Yangyu had high standards. In the past few years, the Taishan Peak had not accepted any disciples. It was really better to have nothing than to have something substandard. The fact that Chu Ning was chosen by Yu Yangyu also showed that he had potential. The disciple recruitment ceremony was over. Knight Sorrow's name was destined to be remembered by people. The bloody handprints on Danding Cliff told the people what had happened today. After being exposed to the wind and sun, the bloody handprints were hard to erase. He had witnessed the rise of a young man. Of course, this was a story for another time. Knight Sorrow and the rest were brought to the main hall of Taishan Peak. Master is back. Are these the members who passed the assessment? Why are these three so miserable? A middle-aged man in the main hall stood up from his chair when he saw Yu Yangyu. He sized up Knight Sorrow and the rest of the 13 people. Gong Xian, these are the third-generation disciples of Taishan Peak. These three will be taught by you personally. The remaining 10 will be divided among your 10 junior brothers. There is no need for Mo Chin. We will talk about it after the apprenticeship ceremony. After Yu Yangyu sat down, he waved his hand at Gong Xian. You will enter the Medicine Valley in no particular order. You will report your age. Gong Xian smiled at Knight Sorrow and the rest. After reporting their ages, the 13 people were ranked. The oldest was 18 years old. She was a girl called Nangong Dai. The youngest was Knight Sorrow. Next, Gong Xian directly ranked them. Nangong Dai was the eldest senior sister, and was called Nangong Yi for short. Tang Tian was ranked 7th, and Gong Xian directly called him Tang Qi. Chu Ning was ranked 9th, and was directly called Chu Zhou. Yi Shang was last, and was called Little 13 by Gong Xian. If your cultivation can't advance by 3 levels within a year, you will report to the chores room. Gong Xian, tell your junior brothers that if they fail, they will have a hard time. Yu Yangyu directly left after giving his instructions. The 3 of you wait here. The rest of you, follow me. After hearing Yu Yangyu's words, Gong Xian gritted his teeth and left with the 10 people except for Knight Sorrow and the other 2. That's it. That's too irresponsible. Tang Tian said while rubbing his shoulders. Chu Ning spread out his hands and didn't say anything. Indeed, Yu Yangyu didn't pay much attention to them. He just threw them to the disciples and didn't care. After half an hour, Gong Xian returned. This is the handwritten copy of the basic cultivation technique, the mysterious cauldron scripture. The 3 of you will each have a copy. Also, these are your cultivation resources for this month. Come, let's go to Marshal Uncle's residence. He threw a handwritten copy to Knight Sorrow and the other 2, and then left the main hall. Gong Xian's residence was a small bamboo peak to the side of Taishan Peak. This small bamboo house is where Marshal Uncle lives. Coincidentally, there is an abandoned bamboo house in the east, south, and west of this bamboo peak. You can all stay there after tidying up. Master has set you 3 levels in a year. I don't have high expectations for you. 3 months. And 3 months of 1 level. If you don't advance in 3 months, I will directly throw you into the myriad beasts forest. Gong Xian said with a smile. Chapter 20. Also, tell me what kind of combat skills you 3 need. Gong Xian sat on a rocking chair in front of the bamboo house and asked while swaying his body. I need sword techniques. Oh right, why do you call me Marshal Uncle and not Marshal Uncle? Chu Ning asked. A updates the most, J updates the most, V updates the most. Nonsense, I am the eldest disciple of Master. No matter who you enter in the future, your master will not be as senior as me. Do you understand? Tang Chi, what kind of combat skills do you need? Night Sorrow, yours. Gong Xian roared as he looked at Tang Chi and Night Sorrow. Blade techniques. Tang Chi stated his requirements. Spear techniques, battle halberd and the like. Night Sorrow touched the black iron spear behind him and said. Night Sorrow's black iron spear had been with him for more than 2 years. It was made from a piece of black iron. Because Bamboo Garden Village did not have the conditions and high-end forging techniques, Night Sorrow's black iron spear was very crude. Okay, come to me tomorrow morning to get it. This is a fasting pill. Take 1 pill and it will last you 3 days. You can go and clean up your own territory. Gong Xian once again threw a bottle of pills to Night Sorrow and the others, then waved his hand to chase them away. Tang Tian and Chu Ning chose the south and west, so Night Sorrow could only go to the east. 13. There is a cliff on the east side of the mountain. It is so deep that you can't see the bottom. There is also miasma below, so you should not go there. Seeing that Night Sorrow chose the east side, Gong Xian opened his mouth and said. Gong Xian was the eldest disciple of Taishan Peak. He was the same as Chu Ling Shao, Lu Jing, Tang Qianqian and the others. They were all successors to the Taishan Peak. Gong Xian stayed here for peace and quiet. Another reason was to guard the cliff of Taishan Peak. In the past, there were 4 people stationed here. Now that Gong Xian's cultivation had improved, he stayed here alone. Night Sorrow nodded to Gong Xian and walked towards the east side. After walking for 7 or 8 li, Night Sorrow saw a bamboo house. Although it was not dilapidated, it was obvious that no one had lived here for a long time. In the courtyard, Night Sorrow saw a broken hatchet. Night Sorrow picked it up and cleaned up the weeds in the courtyard. He also cleared away the trees around the bamboo fence before going to clean up the bamboo house. After an hour, Night Sorrow finally cleaned up the place. After cleaning up, Night Sorrow began to meditate and cultivate. This was not because of the pressure from Yu Yangyu and Gong Xian. Night Sorrow himself had a great interest in cultivation. This cultivation lasted for half a day and 1 night. When the sun rose, Night Sorrow packed up and carried the black iron spear on his back and went to Gong Xian's residence. In front of the bamboo house, Gong Xian leisurely rocked his rocking chair. Little 13, you came quite early. Your condition is not bad. How are your injuries? In response to Martial Uncle's question, my injuries are almost healed. Night Sorrow nodded. Almost healed. Your body is really strong. Why did those 2 bastards still come over? Gong Xian cursed after getting up to check on Night Sorrow's injuries. Just as Gong Xian finished cursing, Tang Tian and Chu Ning appeared with red faces. Don't make me wait for you next time. These are the battle technique manuals you need. Bring them back to me in half a month. Gong Xian threw 3 manuals to Night Sorrow and the others. Martial Uncle, do you have any movement technique manuals? Tang Ning asked. New disciples only have 1 chance to obtain a battle technique manual for free. If you want a movement technique manual, then earn some sect merit points. Gong Xian looked at Tang Ning and said. Then there are no weapons? Chu Ning asked. Of course. Do you even need to ask? Gong Xian rolled his eyes at Chu Ning. Martial Uncle, then how do we earn sect merit points? Night Sorrow asked. After entering the energy gathering stage, you will be qualified to go to Danding Peak's Merit Hall to accept sect missions. Also, you will be able to occupy a spot on the sect's disciple ranking and earn merit points every month. Gong Xian said. Let's not think about that for now. Martial uncle, you go ahead with your work. I'll go cultivate. Night Sorrow took the manuals that Gong Xian had thrown to him and walked towards his bamboo house. You two aren't in a hurry to cultivate. Then let me tell you about the Myriad Beasts Forest. Gong Xian introduced the Myriad Beasts Forest to Chu Ning and Tang Tian unhurriedly. The Myriad Beasts Forest was an uninhabited place not far behind Taishan Peak. Due to the harsh conditions, the Medicine Valley, which was nearby, did not set foot in the forest. The forest spanned thousands of li and there were many poisonous insects, snakes, and ants. The most common type of poisonous insect was called the bloodthirsty flying ant. This poisonous insect's level was not high, only at the peak of grade 1. However, there were many of them. Even a grade 3 or grade 4 monster would be reduced to a pile of bones after being targeted by the bloodthirsty flying ant. Other than that, there are also black-tailed scorpions. Black-tailed scorpions are not high level either. They are similar to the bloodthirsty flying ant, but there are many of them. The difference is that they are only interested in the brains and bone marrow of monsters and humans. They enter through the mouth and come out through the eyes and nose. Sigh. I haven't finished yet. Why are you running? Gong Xian waved at Chu Ning and Tang Tian who were running while vomiting. At this moment, Chu Ning and Tang Tian did not stop running. Both of them were running as fast as they could. The Myriad Beasts Forest was too cruel. If they did not cultivate diligently and meet the requirements, they would be done for if they were thrown into the forest by Gong Xian. Gong Xian would not let the two of them die, but it would not be a problem for him to make them suffer. After Night Sorrow returned to the bamboo house, he could not wait to open the mysterious cauldron scripture. The first thing that came into Night Sorrow's eyes was the introduction of the mysterious cauldron scripture. The mysterious cauldron scripture was the basic cultivation method for low-level disciples of the Medicine Valley. It was a cultivation method for chi refinement and essence-gathering realm cultivators. According to this cultivation method, one could reach the peak of essence-gathering realm. Above that was the spirit cauldron scripture that only inner sect disciples could access. The spirit cauldron scripture was a cultivation method for core condensation and spirit-severing realm cultivators. It could be cultivated to the peak of the spirit-severing realm. The heavenly cauldron scripture that corresponded to the void inquiry stage and the vast heaven realm was the foundation of the Medicine Valley. It was not something that only core disciples and elders could access. The heavenly cauldron scripture was not of a higher level. The highest level was the sacred cauldron scripture. The sacred cauldron scripture could be cultivated to the legendary sacred realm. The sacred cauldron scripture was the collection of cultivation methods in the Medicine Valley. The mysterious cauldron scripture, the spirit cauldron scripture and the heavenly cauldron scripture were just 3 of them. However, the sacred cauldron scripture had been lost. In the opening chapter of the mysterious cauldron scripture, it was stated that whoever could find the chapter of the sacred cauldron scripture could be worshipped by the Medicine Valley. Night Sorrow shook his head when he read this. The chapter of the sacred cauldron scripture had been lost for God knows how many years. It was easier said than done to find it. After flipping through the introduction, Night Sorrow went to read the main text. The essence of the mysterious cauldron scripture was to turn one's body into a cauldron. The circulation route was also very complicated. After memorizing it, Night Sorrow began to circulate the true qi in his dantian according to the circulation route of the mysterious cauldron scripture. After spending 4 hours, Night Sorrow finally guided his true qi into the circulation route of the mysterious cauldron scripture and circulated it for 1 full cycle. This was the official entry level of the mysterious cauldron scripture. Even though the circulation route of the mysterious cauldron scripture was complicated, the speed of the circulation of true qi was extremely fast. It was much faster than the simple qi gathering and qi storing technique that Night Sorrow cultivated in the past. Since he had entered the entry level of the mysterious cauldron scripture, Night Sorrow did not stop. he continued to cultivate all the way until the afternoon. After stretching his waist, Night Sorrow realized that his cultivation level had increased significantly. If this continued, he would be able to reach the 4th level of the Qi refining realm in a few days. After taking a bath in a small stream not far from the bamboo house, Night Sorrow returned to the bamboo house and took a fasting pill and a spirit cultivating pill. Then, he continued to cultivate. What Night Sorrow did not know was that a black shadow appeared at the bottom of a bamboo tree outside the bamboo house. Chapter 21. Seeing that Night Sorrow was quietly cultivating, the figure left and went to Gong Xian's bamboo house. Master. Gong Xian quickly walked out when the figure arrived in front of the bamboo house. Yu Yongyu nodded to Gong Xian and instructed, "Yes, these 3 brats are all good seedlings. Be strict with them. Tomorrow, call a few odd job disciples over to clean up your place and build a few more bamboo houses. The odd job disciples will stay behind. The 3 of them are still young and need to be taken care of in their daily lives." Disciple understands. Gong Xian nodded. After giving the instructions, Yu Yongyu left. After cultivating for an entire night and washing up, Night Sorrow first practiced a round of martial arts before returning to the bamboo house and opening the battle technique manual that Gong Xian had given him. The wind-chasing spear technique was a set of spear techniques. Standing in the courtyard, Night Sorrow began to study it in detail. At this time, he was very grateful to Father Gu. Although Bamboo Garden Village was a hunting village, he had not forgotten to teach Night Sorrow culture. Therefore, the words in the ancient book were not difficult for Night Sorrow to understand. Night Sorrow could also recognize some of the ancient characters. Taking out the black iron spear, Night Sorrow began to practice the wind-chasing spear technique in the courtyard. After cultivating for a while, Night Sorrow sighed. He had not cultivated the wind-chasing spear technique's effects. The wind-chasing spear technique pursued 2 points. One was speed, which emphasized using speed to control the slow. The other was ferocity, which required great strength. The spear was like a flood dragon. After cultivating for an hour, Night Sorrow still couldn't find the right feeling in terms of speed or strength. With a sigh, Night Sorrow sat in the small courtyard and pondered. He pondered how to achieve these 2 points. After pondering for a long time, Night Sorrow still could not find the feeling. The conclusion he came to was that his cultivation was not high enough and his body was not strong enough. Night Sorrow stood up and exhaled. Then, he continued to cultivate. Night Sorrow planned to cultivate his foundation first. He wanted to raise his true Qi first. Only by cultivating his true Qi would he be able to achieve twice the result with half the effort. For the next 2 days, Night Sorrow cultivated diligently. In between, Gong Xian came by once to explain to Night Sorrow the problems he faced in his cultivation. When he asked about the wind-chasing spear art, Gong Xian's answers enlightened Night Sorrow. The wind-chaser spear technique was a rank 2 battle skill, which meant that it could only be practiced by cultivators in the essence-gathering realm. Gong Xian had no choice but to give the wind-chaser spear technique to Night Sorrow, because the library did not have any rank 1 spear or battle halberd battle skills. This time, Night Sorrow felt a little more at ease. It wasn't his fault that he couldn't master the chasing wind spear art. After instructing Night Sorrow to look for him if he had any problems, Gong Xian left. He knew how to teach others. If he were to teach them step by step, then at most, he would only be able to teach them a copy of himself. He would only need to give them pointers during crucial moments. The rest of the time, it was better to let them go. On the 5th day at Taishan Peak, Night Sorrow's cultivation successfully entered the 4th level of refining Qi. This made Night Sorrow very happy. It hadn't even been 2 months since he left Juyuan village, but his strength had increased by a lot. It was several times more than before. With his strength increasing, Night Sorrow went to cultivate the Windchaser spear art. Although he couldn't reach the highest realm of the spear art, he could still improve himself. While Night Sorrow was cultivating, Gong Xian came. "This is your robe. If I didn't give it to you, you wouldn't have taken it." Looking at the robe that Gong Xian threw on the bamboo table, Night Sorrow picked it up and walked towards the room. Halfway through, Night Sorrow stopped. "Martial uncle, isn't the white robe the inner disciple robe? Do new members start from outer disciple?" Normally, new disciples are outer disciples. However, our Taishan peak is an exception. As long as you officially enter the Taishan peak, you will be an inner disciple. Gong Xian said with a smile. He was quite proud of this. This was Yu Yang Yu's strength. This was something that the Medicine Valley recognized. Taishan Peak only had odd job workers, inner disciples, elite disciples, and core disciples. There were no outer disciples. So that's how it is. Night Sorrow nodded. He originally thought that he would have to go through the process of becoming an outer disciple. I Original T Edition G Debut, Little 13, don't work too hard. You just need to familiarize yourself with the wind-chasing spear art. Don't force yourself. Also, if you have nothing to do, go to Martial Uncle's place for some tea and relax. Gong Xian saw that Night Sorrow's forehead was still sweating. He didn't want Night Sorrow to be too stressed. After all, the 14-year-old Night Sorrow was still a child. Thank you, Martial Uncle. Night Sorrow understands. Night Sorrow nodded to Gong Xian. Alright, then Martial Uncle will be leaving. I still have to go check on those two bastards. Those two bastards aren't as worry-free as you. Gong Xian waved his hand at Yi Shang and left. When he arrived at Tang Tian and Chu Ning's place, Gong Xian didn't have a good expression. When he saw that Tang Tian wasn't cultivating, he immediately scolded him. Tang Tian felt wronged. He had just stopped to take a breather when Gong Xian caught him. He used Night Sorrow as an example and scolded Tang Tian until he was speechless. Chu Ning didn't escape either. She was holding a broken teapot to boil water to make tea and was scolded even more miserably. Gong Xian said that they would wait for 3 months to see the results. Whoever didn't advance, they would meet in the 10,000 Beasts forest. For the next few days, Night Sorrow worked hard to cultivate. On this day, Night Sorrow came out of the bamboo house. Just as he was about to take a bath, he saw a white bird the height of a human landing not far from the bamboo house. One of its wings was covered in blood. What kind of bird was this? It was still young. Looking at the white bird's feathers and beak, Night Sorrow judged that it was an injured demonic beast. It was a young demonic beast and had a lot of room for growth. Looking at its sharp beak and claws, Night Sorrow also knew that this bird, which he didn't know the name of, would definitely be an extraordinary demonic beast when it matured. If he could tame it, it would be a top-grade flying mount. With this thought in mind, Night Sorrow slowly approached the white bird. When he was about 6 to 7 feet away from the white bird, it became alert. This made Night Sorrow even more certain of his thoughts. This bird was a mutated species. When he was hunting in the past, there were very few demonic beasts with such alertness. Seeing Night Sorrow, the white bird began to run. Night Sorrow began to chase. Night Sorrow did not want to let go of such an opportunity. Night Sorrow's speed was very fast, but the white bird's speed was not slow either. Although its wing was injured and could not fly, when it flapped its wings, its running speed was much faster than normal demonic beasts. It was several times faster than the black-scaled lion that Night Sorrow killed in the past. This was also because Night Sorrow's cultivation had reached the 4th level of Qi refining, so he did not lose it. As long as the white bird didn't shake him off, Yi Shang wasn't afraid. In terms of endurance, Yi Shang had run for several hours in the wilderness of Bamboo Garden Village. He didn't believe that the white bird could run for several more hours. One chased and one fled. One man and one bird went further and further away from Little Bamboo Peak. The white bird panicked and did not know where to go, and Night Sorrow followed closely behind. In less than half an hour, one man and one bird ran for hundreds of miles in the forest. Night Sorrow wanted to curse. The white bird's injured wing was bleeding non-stop, but it did not stop. Even if it stopped fighting, it would be fine. Just as Yi Shan was getting irritated, the white bird stopped and chirped incessantly. "I told you to run, why aren't you running?" Night Sorrow's body flashed as he caught up to the white bird. After catching up, Night Sorrow's expression changed. He knew why the white bird stopped running and why it was chirping like that. The white bird's claws were entangled by two red tentacles that were as thick as a human's arm. They were constantly being pulled forward. Night Sorrow took a step forward and waved the black iron spear in his hand towards the red tentacles. Bang! Chapter 22. Night Sorrow knew that some demonic beasts had very hard hides. Direct slashing was useless, but slashing might be effective. Just as Night Sorrow had predicted, this kind of tug-of-war was effective. The red tentacle was cut open by Night Sorrow's black iron spear. This injured tentacle did not let go of White Bird, but the other uninjured tentacle let go of White Bird. After letting go of White Bird's red tentacle, it quickly whipped Night Sorrow to the ground. Then, it wrapped around Night Sorrow's legs and pulled him forward like it was pulling White Bird. The two tentacles pulled Night Sorrow and White Bird forward, almost squeezing them together. Night Sorrow held the black iron spear in his right hand and slashed at the red tentacle wrapped around White Bird. At this moment, it was not convenient for Night Sorrow to deal with the red tentacle wrapped around his legs. He and White Bird were squeezed together, so there was no space for him to use his skills. He had to free one of them. As Night Sorrow's black iron spear continued to attack, the tentacle wrapped around White Bird was cut in half. White Bird was in the same situation as Night Sorrow, it was not convenient for it to save itself. White Bird, who could not save itself, lowered its head and pecked at the red tentacles on Night Sorrow's legs. Seeing White Bird's actions, Night Sorrow was very shocked. White Bird already had intelligence and knew that he did not want to kill it. However, the red tentacles were fatal, so it understood that they had to defend against the enemy at the same time. Following the red tentacles' pull, the man and bird were pulled out of the forest and into an open space. Without the obstruction of the trees, the man and beast's sliding speed increased. However, the red tentacle wrapped around White Bird's claws was almost cut off by Night Sorrow's black iron spear. In order to avoid being cut off by Night Sorrow, the red tentacle let go of White Bird. White Bird, who was released, did not leave. After pulling away from Night Sorrow, it continued to peck at the red tentacle under Night Sorrow's feet. At this moment, Night Sorrow's expression changed. As he pulled, the length of the red tentacle increased. The parts that Night Sorrow could see also became thicker. The thickest part was already as thick as a human head. With a flick of its red tentacle, the extra part drew a circle around Night Sorrow and tied him up in two. Night Sorrow's arm that was holding onto the black iron spear was entangled. The red tentacle continued to drag Night Sorrow forward while the other tentacle attacked White Bird. White Bird, who was prepared, wasn't entangled by the red tentacles. While dodging the red tentacles, she kept attacking Night Sorrow. She kept attacking the red tentacles that were entangling Night Sorrow. A cliff. Just as Night Sorrow was considering how to escape, a bottomless cliff appeared. This situation caused Night Sorrow's heart to turn cold. Looking at White Bird who was still fighting, Night Sorrow roared, "I know you can understand me, let's go. Let's go." Ignoring Night Sorrow's words, the white bird let out a sharp cry and pounced forward, its sharp beak piercing into the red tentacles that were coiling around Night Sorrow's body. As he got closer and closer to the cliff, Night Sorrow's heart was exceptionally clear. He had only himself to blame for being in this state. However, he was the one who chased White Bird here and helped her break the bindings. But after all, the karma was on him and there was no need for him to drag White Bird down with him. He stretched out his unbound left hand and pressed it on White Bird's body. Then, he used all his strength and pushed. Go! White Bird was pushed away by Night Sorrow, but it did not manage to escape. It was entangled by the second red tentacle, and both of them were pulled down the cliff. As his body fell, Night Sorrow discovered what the red tentacles were. They were earth dragon worms. The earth dragon worm was also known as ghost string. It was a very common demonic beast. It could not even be considered a demonic beast. Normal earth dragon worms did not have much combat strength. They ate the rotten meat of the corpses of animals and rarely attacked. The largest earth dragon worm that Night Sorrow had seen was only as thick as a thumb and 40 to 50 feet long. However, the earth dragon worm in front of him was too huge. Its length could not be estimated. The thickest part was already as thick as a person's waist. One must know that the growth of earth dragon worms usually increased the length of their body. A 30 feet long earth dragon worm was as thick as a thumb. A 50 feet long earth dragon worm was also as thick as a thumb. However, the earth dragon worm in front of him was already as thick as a person's waist. As they fell, Night Sorrow also realized why the earth dragon worm only had 2 antennae attacking from the cliff. Its body was fixed to the cliff's wall. There was an ancient tree on the cliff and the earth dragon worm's body was stuck by the roots. The earth dragon worm was a very lazy creature. After a full meal, it could rest for a long time. Maybe when it was still young, it was stuck by the roots of the ancient tree and never came out. Night Sorrow and White Bird continued to fall and their speed became faster and faster. Bang! There was a muffled sound. This was the sound of the tentacles being pulled taut. Following which, Night Sorrow and White Bird were pulled by the tentacles and bounced up before falling again. They fell once again. The earth dragon worm's tentacles that were severely injured and pulled violently could no longer hold them back. Night Sorrow and White Bird, who were wrapped around by the tentacles, continued to fall. Paw! Night Sorrow felt that he had been smashed into pieces. His entire body was in great pain. He looked up at the sky and saw that the 2 red tentacles were still swaying on the cliff 50 to 60 feet above. Night Sorrow knew that he didn't fall to his death because the earth dragon worm's tentacles were long enough. After shaking his body, Night Sorrow realized that his right arm was broken. The other injuries weren't serious. White Bird stood beside Night Sorrow. It was much better than Night Sorrow. When the earth dragon worm let go of it, it flapped its wings to reduce the impact and didn't suffer any injuries. Sitting up, Night Sorrow reached into his chest. Night Sorrow was holding pills. After taking them out, Night Sorrow realized that his fasting pills and vitality cultivation pills were fine. The bottle containing the meridian opening pills was broken, but the pills weren't destroyed. After eating a meridian opening pill and looking at White Bird's injured wings, Night Sorrow gave the last meridian opening pill to White Bird. After eating the meridian opening pill, Night Sorrow scanned his surroundings. He realized that he was standing on a platform with a radius of 20 to 30 feet. Night Sorrow stretched his head out to look below the platform. It was so foggy that he couldn't see the bottom at all. Turning his head, Night Sorrow looked at the other parts of the platform. With a glance, Night Sorrow realized that there was something unusual. There were traces of human movement on the cliff. Looking carefully, Night Sorrow saw that under the cover of the vines, there was a stone door. It should be called the entrance of a cave. On the 2 sides of the stone door, there were clear words. On the left, it was awakening, and on the right, it was Tao comprehending. Looking at the entrance covered by the vines, Knight Sorrow held his black iron spear and walked in. If it was any other time, Knight Sorrow wouldn't do this. At the very least, he would plan before acting. But now, he couldn't. It was too dangerous here. The platform was too small. If any demonic beasts rushed out of the cave, they would be easily forced out of the platform. If there was a battle, it would be better to fight inside the cave. Originally, Knight Sorrow thought that the cave would be dark and damp with poisonous snakes and insects crawling around. But now, Knight Sorrow saw a bright and clean tunnel. Besides some moss at the entrance, the inside of the cave was very clean. There was even a half-inch diameter night pearl inlaid on the ceiling of the cave. Turning his head to look at the stone wall, Knight Sorrow saw blade marks. Looking carefully, Knight Sorrow realized that each blade mark was about 2 to 3 feet long. In other words, one side of the stone wall was cut out by 5 to 6 blades. Chapter 23. Holding the black iron spear, Knight Sorrow knocked on the wall. As he knocked, the stone wall made a crisp sound. The stone powder did not fall, and there was not a single mark. This allowed Knight Sorrow to know how hard the stone wall was. At the same time, Yishang also understood that the cultivation of the senior who had created this cave abode had reached an unfathomable level. Turning his head, Knight Sorrow saw the white bird quietly following beside him, flapping its wings from time to time. Knight Sorrow knew that there was no danger in this cave. Monsters had a stronger intuition for danger than humans. Now that the white bird was so quiet, it meant that there were no powerful monsters in this cave. At the very least, there were no monsters that could suppress the white bird in terms of rank. Holding the black iron spear, Knight Sorrow slowly moved forward. Although he was sure that there were no high-level monsters, Knight Sorrow was worried that there might be traps that monsters could not detect. After moving forward for a distance of 3 to 4 feet, a stone room with a radius of 3 feet appeared in front of Knight Sorrow. The stone room had a stone table and a stone chair. Looking inside, Knight Sorrow could not help but take a step back. On the chair inside the table was a skeleton. The robe hanging on the skeleton had been weathered, and the tattered robe was draped over the skeleton. Knight Sorrow had seen the skeleton of both humans and monsters when he was hunting in the mountains beside Bamboo Garden Village. Knight Sorrow had seen both human and monster skeletons before. However, in this cave, the appearance of the skeleton was a bit sudden. Knight Sorrow was not used to this. After stabilizing his emotions, Knight Sorrow walked in front of the table and carefully looked at the skeleton. This skeleton was different from the skeletons that Knight Sorrow had seen before. This skeleton was full of luster, like jade, and there were no traces of damage. Looking at the skeleton, Knight Sorrow could confirm that the owner of this skeleton was very tall when he was alive. He was at least 6 feet tall. Even though he was dead, the skeleton was still sitting there full of domineering aura. As Knight Sorrow approached, the wind brought about by him completely weathered the robe on the skeleton, turning it into ashes. The skeleton was completely exposed in front of Knight Sorrow. Knight Sorrow bowed to the skeleton. He did not believe in ghosts and gods, but after entering this cave, he had disturbed the skeleton's eternal rest. After straightening up, Knight Sorrow found some handwriting on the table in front of the skeleton. The handwriting should have been written with fingers. It was somewhat messy, but it was deeply engraved on the stone table. After changing his position, Knight Sorrow lowered his head and blew the dust on the table. The robe on the skeleton's robe was weathered, and the table was covered with dust. Upon closer inspection, Yishan discovered that there were the last words left behind by the skeleton, as well as some of the person's life. Was. Knight Sorrow frowned. He had never heard of this name. Could it be the bottomless canyon in front of him? The following records explained the cause of Feng Chen's death. He went to investigate because of the outbreak of nether energy in Taichuan. In the end, he encountered the Nether Beast King. After killing the Nether Beast, he was also contaminated by the nether energy. He could not get rid of the nether energy and died. Feng Chen's last words were to ask the fated person to return the Holy Cauldron scripture to the Medicine Valley. When he was stationed in Taichuan, he took the Holy Cauldron scripture from the sect, hoping to enter the legendary Holy Realm. However, he did not succeed. He hoped that the fated person would return the Holy Cauldron scripture to the Medicine Valley and leave everything else to the fated person. Holy Cauldron scripture. Seeing these 3 words, Knight Sorrow was extremely shocked. Wasn't the Holy Cauldron scripture the Medicine Valley's treasure scripture? Looking around, Knight Sorrow did not see the Holy Cauldron scripture anywhere. However, Feng Chen had asked the fated person to return the Holy Cauldron scripture to the Medicine Valley, so the Holy Cauldron scripture must be there. However, Knight Sorrow could not find the Holy Cauldron scripture after searching the stone room for a long time. Could it be that someone had come and taken the Holy Cauldron scripture away? However, Knight Sorrow felt that this was unlikely. When he came in, the clothes on the skeleton had just been weathered. Looking at the skeleton again, Knight Sorrow noticed the skeleton's ring finger. There was a silver ring on the finger. A storage ring. Could it be a storage ring? Knight Sorrow had heard from Papa Gu that in the outside world, high-level cultivators would use storage rings. It was a special kind of Dharma treasure. There was a space inside it that could store things. At the thought of this, Knight Sorrow bowed to the skeleton and took the ring off. Yishang took the ring and looked it over, but he couldn't find anything special about it. He bit his finger and dripped a drop of blood onto the ring. Many treasures needed to be bound by blood. Yishang still had some common sense. The blood dripped on the ring and was quickly absorbed by it. At this moment, Knight Sorrow had a realization as he looked at the ring. He felt that he had a connection with the ring. It's really a storage ring. Knight Sorrow thought, and a special space appeared in Knight Sorrow's mind. The special space was 30 feet square. There were shelves on both sides of the space and a wooden table in the middle. A stack of ancient books was neatly placed on the table. HP question version. Head A. Hair. With a thought, Knight Sorrow took out all the ancient books. The first book was the Holy Cauldron scripture. There were 3 ancient words written on the ancient book. It was the Holy Cauldron scripture. This was the Medicine Valley's ancient book, the Holy Cauldron scripture. Knight Sorrow was a little excited. He picked up the ancient book and started reading. The first chapter was the mysterious cauldron scripture. After looking at it, Knight Sorrow realized that it was exactly the same as the one Gong Xian gave him. This made Knight Sorrow certain that this was the Medicine Valley's ancient book, the Holy Cauldron scripture. After putting down the ancient book, Knight Sorrow went to look at the second ancient book. The second ancient book had the words, Heaven Covering Hand, written on it. After opening it, Knight Sorrow studied it carefully. He realized that the famous heaven-shaking hand of the Taishian Peak's Peak Master was only a part of the heaven-covering hand. This heaven-covering hand was created by Feng Chen himself and did not need to be returned to the Medicine Valley. The third ancient book was much older than the first 2. It was called the Myriad Tao Treasure Book. Knight Sorrow opened the Myriad Tao Treasure Book. A piece of beast skin floated out from the middle. There were words on it. After picking it up and taking a look, Knight Sorrow knew the origin of the Myriad Tao Treasure Book. The Myriad Tao Treasure Book was obtained by Feng Chen in Taichuan Peak. There were some of Feng Chen's opinions written on it. The Myriad Tao Treasure Book was the opposite of the Holy Cauldron Scripture. The essence of the Holy Cauldron Scripture was to use one's body as a cauldron. The circulation of one's quintessential qi was in the form of a cauldron. When cultivated to the extreme, one could turn one's body into a cauldron. The Myriad Tao Treasure Book used heaven and earth as a cauldron to forge one's body into a spiritual treasure. Feng Chen's opinion was that the Myriad Tao treasure book was much stronger than the Holy Cauldron scripture. However, his Holy Cauldron scripture was already very advanced. If he cultivated the Myriad Tao treasure book, it would not be worth it. Therefore, he wanted to achieve a breakthrough in the Holy Cauldron scripture. In the end, he was invaded by the netherworld energy and died. After putting away the Myriad Tao treasure book, Night Sorrow opened the other ancient book. This was a Fey illustrated handbook. It recorded all the medicinal herbs, poisonous herbs, ores, demonic beasts, and spirit beasts in the world. The last book was a handwritten alchemy manual. It was a handwritten alchemy manual that Feng Chen had written himself by combining other alchemy manuals. Night Sorrow could understand this. The Medicine Valley was famous for alchemy. As an elder of the Medicine Valley, Feng Chen's attainments in alchemy were definitely not low. Chapter 24. Night Sorrow saw plenty of elixirs on the shelves in the storage ring. Some of them were refined by Feng Chen himself, while some were supreme-grade elixirs that he had collected. The harvest was so great that Night Sorrow didn't even think about it. The Sacred Cauldron Sutra had to be returned to the Medicine Valley, but Night Sorrow planned to return it after memorizing it. As for the rest that Feng Chen had left behind, they were all his. After stabilizing his emotions, Night Sorrow and White Bird left the cave. The cave was a little stifling, and Night Sorrow wasn't used to it. White Bird had been following behind Night Sorrow. When they reached the platform, Night Sorrow looked up and had to consider the problem of getting out. Looking at the cliff, Night Sorrow knew that it would be difficult to climb up. Furthermore, there was a terrifying earth dragon worm on the cliff. Patting White Bird, Night Sorrow, who was sitting cross-legged to cultivate and recover, suddenly had an idea. He didn't know the species of white bird, but he could look for it in the Fey illustration book. Night Sorrow flipped through the pages of the Fey illustration book for demonic beasts and spirit beasts, but he couldn't find any records of white bird. White bird was rather similar to two types of demonic beasts. One of them was the green roc, an ancient variant of the green roc. White bird's sharp claws and beak were very similar to the green roc. Its wings, tail, and feathers were very similar to the black awan, which fed on gold and stone. Since he couldn't find anything, Night Sorrow put down the Fey illustration book and sat cross-legged on the platform to cultivate. White Bird stayed quietly by Night Sorrow's side. For the next few days, Night Sorrow stayed on the platform to cultivate and recover from his injuries. Apart from his right arm, which hadn't fully recovered, White Bird was very quiet. White Bird had been very quiet these few days. Yi Shang had given it a fasting pill, so it stayed by Yi Shang's side every day. The injury on its wings had almost recovered. Although his life wasn't in danger, Night Sorrow was still a little anxious. Not being able to get out wasn't a solution. White Bird, your injuries have healed. Can you bring me up there? After a training session, Night Sorrow looked at White Bird, who was fixing her feathers, and asked. Night Sorrow was just casually asking, but White Bird really nodded. At most K knew, chapter, supra/#, this caused Night Sorrow to be extremely surprised. He was originally just asking a question out of boredom, but White Bird's performance showed that there was a chance. There was hope, but Night Sorrow was still a little worried. The White Bird was still young, and its feathers were still soft. There were still green skin on its beak. It would be difficult for it to carry him up. After cultivating for another day, White Bird's wings were completely healed. Night Sorrow planned to leave. Before leaving, Night Sorrow used his black iron spear to pry off a large rock from the cliff and sealed the entrance of the cave. Then, he nodded at White Bird. Shall we go? Hearing Night Sorrow's words, White Bird stood up straight and spread out its wings. It slowly fluttered. White Bird's body was about 5 feet tall, and its wings were about 6 feet wide. And then let's give it a try. If I sit on your back, it will affect your flight. After you fly up, I will grab onto your claws." Night Sorrow pointed at White Bird's claws and said. This was the conclusion that Night Sorrow came to in the past 2 days. White Bird's body wasn't big. If he sat on White Bird's back, it would give White Bird a lot of pressure. If he only grabbed onto White Bird's claws, it would be his own weight, and it wouldn't affect White Bird much. As for the heavy black iron spear, Night Sorrow didn't plan to throw it away. He planned to see the situation and make a decision. If White Bird couldn't carry him and the black iron spear, then he would just give it up. In that case, even if White Bird didn't carry the black iron spear, it wouldn't be able to fly to the top of the cliff. If White Bird could carry him and the black iron spear, then there would be a chance. At the most, he would just throw away the black iron spear at the crucial moment. White Bird spread its wings and flew into the air. It fluttered outside the platform and then circled above Night Sorrow's head. Seeing White Bird fly back, Night Sorrow exerted strength in his legs and jumped up. He raised his right hand and grabbed onto White Bird's claws. White Bird carried Night Sorrow and left the platform. After leaving the platform, White Bird circled around the canyon. Its speed of ascension was very fast. Feeling that White Bird wasn't under any pressure, Night Sorrow heaved a sigh of relief. If White Bird could maintain this state, then it wouldn't be a problem to fly up. If White Bird's state decreased, then he would throw away the black iron spear. If it wasn't necessary, Night Sorrow really didn't want to throw away the black iron spear. Although it was just an ordinary black iron spear, it had been with him for a long time and he had a special feeling for it. It was also a gift from Father Gu. White Bird's flying speed was very fast. Even though it was circling around the cliff, Night Sorrow could feel that the cliff was constantly descending. As White Bird ascended, Night Sorrow saw the place where the earth dragon worm was. Its 2 bright red antennae were still climbing up the cliff. One of the antennae had a black tiger wrapped around it. The black tiger was still roaring, but it was destined to be sucked dry by the earth dragon worm and die. At this moment, Night Sorrow knew that there wouldn't be a problem to get out. White Bird had already flown halfway and didn't show any signs of exhaustion. After the time it took to brew a cup of tea, Night Sorrow's vision widened. White Bird carried Night Sorrow and flew out of the cliff. After reaching the top of the cliff, White Bird didn't immediately land. It carried Night Sorrow for another 6 to 7 miles before landing. After all, the top of the cliff was still the territory of the earth dragon worm. White Bird landed under an ancient tree. Night Sorrow rubbed his sore right hand and looked at White Bird. Originally, I chased you because I wanted to tame you and make you a flying beast. This time, you saved me, so we are friends. Are you willing to come with me or live by yourself? Looking at White Bird, Night Sorrow pondered for a moment and said. After a few days of interaction, Night Sorrow knew that White Bird wasn't ordinary. He didn't need to look at White Bird like a demonic beast. White Bird turned its head and looked at Night Sorrow. Its bright eyes sized up Night Sorrow, but it didn't give Night Sorrow an answer. After waiting for a while, Night Sorrow was very happy when White Bird didn't leave. If you don't want to leave, then follow me. Heavily patting White Bird's wings, Night Sorrow led the way in front while White Bird followed behind Night Sorrow. If it was a normal person, they might get lost in an environment with little sunlight and trees covering the sky. However, this wouldn't happen to Night Sorrow. 4 hours later, Night Sorrow and White Bird appeared in front of the bamboo house. When Night Sorrow arrived in front of the bamboo house, he saw Gong Xian anxiously pacing back and forth in the courtyard. Seeing Night Sorrow return, Gong Xian quickly walked over and heavily patted Night Sorrow's shoulder. Little 13, where did you run off to? I didn't see you yesterday. If I still don't see you today, I will have to report to Master. Ah! What bird is this? After shouting at Night Sorrow, Gongxian saw White Bird following Night Sorrow out of the forest. My new companion, I also don't know what bird it is. Night Sorrow's face was covered in sweat. Gongxian's slap had landed on Night Sorrow's injured right arm. Seeing that Night Sorrow's complexion wasn't right, Gongxian sized up Night Sorrow and asked, "You're injured?" "Something happened, my right arm is broken." Night Sorrow nodded. He knew that he couldn't hide his injury and there was no need to hide it. Chapter 25. Uncle Master, I've taken the pill, Night Sorrow said. This is a meridian clearing pill. It's very effective for bone and muscle injuries. Gongxian stuffed the pill bottle into Night Sorrow's hand. After giving Night Sorrow the pill, Gongxian continued to observe the white bird. The white bird's eyes flashed. It shook its head and pecked at Gongxian. I can't tell what kind of bird it is. It looks like the ancient green pig, but it's definitely not one, Gongxian concluded. I thought Uncle Master knew. I saw it fighting with other beasts, so I fought with it. It's now willing to follow me, Night Sorrow said. Not bad, not bad. A beast that's willing to follow you is much better than a tamed beast. There's room for development. I'll have Master take a look at it someday. Gongxian looked at Yishang with a strange expression. Many people dreamed of having a flying tamed beast, yet Yishang had managed to get his hands on a demon beast that was willing to follow him after just one trip. After a tamed beast was trained by a human, it would lose its wildness and self-awareness. It would also lose its room for development, making it difficult for it to advance. A beast like the white bird that was willing to follow someone was much rarer than a tamed beast. There was no comparison in terms of value. You're in the 4th stage of Qi refinement. You've fulfilled my requirements, but you can't slack off. Also, the white bird's appetite is shocking. It'll be troublesome for you to feed it yourself. I'll order the servants to send food over every day. Gongxian left after giving his instructions. As he left, Gongxian looked at Night Sorrow with a strange gaze. After Gongxian left, Night Sorrow changed his clothes and combed the white bird's feathers. I have to give you a name. I hope you're the king of the heavens. Let's call you Tianyu. The white bird stretched its neck and chirped twice, acknowledging the name Night Sorrow gave it. Although his right arm was inconvenient, Night Sorrow still used his left hand to make a place for Tianyu to rest in the courtyard in front of the bamboo house before he went to cultivate. Back in the bamboo house, Night Sorrow took out the Holy Cauldron scripture and began to memorize it. He could return the Holy Cauldron scripture to the Medicine Valley, but he had to have the right to cultivate it. It would only belong to him if he wrote it down. It took Night Sorrow 2 hours to memorize the entire Holy Cauldron scripture. Putting away the Holy Cauldron scripture, Night Sorrow thought of another problem. Feng Chen did not cultivate the myriad Tao's treasured scripture because he had reached a certain level of maturity in the Holy Cauldron scripture. He wanted to achieve something in the Holy Cauldron scripture. Yi Futian was different. He had just reached the entry level of the mysterious cauldron scripture and could cultivate both at the same time. After reading Feng Chen's analysis of the Holy Cauldron scripture and the Myriad Tao tome, Night Sorrow felt that there was no conflict. One was to use one's own body as a cauldron while the other was to use heaven and earth as a cauldron to temper one's body. These two could be done at the same time. With this thought in mind, Night Sorrow began to cultivate. After reaching the entry level of the mysterious cauldron scripture, his true qi could circulate automatically according to the route. Night Sorrow spent all his energy on the cultivation of the Myriad Tao tome. The cultivation of the Myriad Tao tome was rather complicated. It required one to open one's own acupoints and absorb the spiritual qi of heaven and earth into one's body. Then, the spiritual qi would circulate in one's blood and bones to strengthen one's body. The first level of the Myriad Tao tome was called the blood refining realm. It was equivalent to the qi refinement realm. The second level was the muscle-strengthening realm, which corresponded to the essence-gathering realm. The third level was the bone-forging realm, which corresponded to the core condensation realm. The fourth level was the unity realm, which corresponded to the spirit-severing realm. The fifth level was the Tao-querying realm, which corresponded to the void inquiry stage. The sixth level was the spirit refinement realm, which corresponded to the vast heaven realm. The seventh level was the golden body realm, which corresponded to the sage realm. The highest level of the Holy Cauldron scripture was the sage realm. However, there were more levels after the myriad Tao tome. The eighth level of the myriad Tao tome was the undead realm. The ninth level was the rebirth realm. There was also a blank page after that. This was also the reason why Night Sorrow intuitively felt that the myriad Tao tome was stronger than the Holy Cauldron scripture. The myriad Tao tome could reach a realm that the Holy Cauldron scripture could not. As he cultivated, Night Sorrow felt that the spiritual energy of heaven and earth was like stars entering his body through his acupoints. It entered his blood vessels and flowed along with his blood. This cultivation lasted for a day and a night. When he came out of the bamboo house, Night Sorrow felt refreshed. It was as if his body had endless energy. The injury on his right arm had also healed a lot. Just as Night Sorrow was washing up, two young men in gray robes appeared. The two of them were carrying a wild boar. "You are?" Night Sorrow asked. "We are odd job workers from the Taishan Peak. Master Gong sent us here. He said that there is a demonic beast here that needs to be fed," one of the odd job workers said. In the Medicine Valley, only official members of the Medicine Valley could address each other as senior brother, junior brother, uncle master, and so on. The odd job workers addressed the disciples of the Medicine Valley as master. "Okay, thank you for your hard work. Leave half of it for me to roast and feed the other half to the wild boar." Night Sorrow knew that these odd job workers were sent by Gong Xian. Night Sorrow, who was in a better mood, started a fire and roasted half of the wild boar. Recently, Night Sorrow had been eating fasting pills. Now, he wanted to eat meat. Half of the wild boar was quickly eaten by Tianyu. Tianyu came to Night Sorrow's side and watched Night Sorrow roast the wild boar. The two odd job workers helped Night Sorrow clean the bamboo house. After the wild boar was roasted, Night Sorrow cut a piece for each of the odd job workers. Then, he poured himself a bowl of wine and began to eat the roasted meat. Seeing that Night Sorrow was ignoring him, Tianyu pecked the roasted meat in Night Sorrow's hand and took it away. He stretched his neck twice and swallowed it directly. "You even eat cooked meat?" Night Sorrow was stunned. How could a demonic beast eat cooked meat? Tianyu was really an anomaly. Update unspecified currency new YR most popular, seeing that Tianyu liked it, Night Sorrow cut the roasted wild boar into pieces and fed them to Tianyu. In the end, Night Sorrow only ate 2 pieces. Tianyu ate half of the wild boar raw and cooked. "Thank you for your hard work. Prepare more in the future. If I am cultivating, you can directly roast it and feed it." After giving some instructions to the odd job workers, Night Sorrow took out one of the gold notes that Qin Aoshuan gave him and handed it to one of the odd job workers. "Lord Knight, you are too polite. This is what we should do. We do not dare to accept the silver notes. If other lords find out, we will be chased down the mountain." Seeing that Night Sorrow gave the gold notes, the two odd job workers became anxious. The Medicine Valley was not only strict with its disciples, but it was also strict with the odd job workers. "You two don't have to be nervous. Just buy some wine for me. Will that do?" Night Sorrow said with a smile. Qin Aoshuan had given him a lot of gold notes. 1 or 2 was nothing to Night Sorrow. The two odd job workers bowed and thanked him before leaving. They knew that Night Sorrow was taking care of them. Buying a few jars of wine would not cost much money, let alone gold notes. After playing with Tianyu for a while, Night Sorrow entered the bamboo building to continue cultivating. He felt that the myriad Tao scripture was very mysterious. It had a very obvious effect on strengthening the body. After cultivating it once, most of the injuries on his right arm had healed. It was even more effective than medicinal pills. After cultivating for 2 days, Night Sorrow's right arm was as good as new. If other people knew about this, they would be very shocked. How could a broken bone heal in 3 or 4 days? Night Sorrow knew that this was the effect of cultivating the myriad Tao scripture together with the meridian clearing pill. Chapter 26. After cultivating for a few days, Night Sorrow had officially reached the entry level of the myriad Tao treasured tome. As long as he meditated, the sacred cauldron scripture and the myriad Tao treasured tome would automatically operate. Night Sorrow also discovered that his strength had increased by a lot. A single punch could break a tree as thick as a bowl. He estimated that his fist strength was at least 500 kilograms. His legs also had 500 kilograms of strength. This was something he couldn't do before cultivating the myriad Tao treasured tome. With the increase in strength of his legs and arms, Night Sorrow's strength and speed had an obvious improvement when cultivating the wind-chasing spear art. Night Sorrow felt that if he continued cultivating like this, it wouldn't be long before he could reach the entry level of the wind-chasing spear art. After a few days, Night Sorrow and Tianyu's relationship became better and better. Every day, after cultivating, Night Sorrow would bathe and comb Tianyu's feathers. Tianyu still had a strange temper. He only recognized Night Sorrow. If the 2 servants fed him, he wouldn't eat. Even when he went out to hunt, he wouldn't touch the food given to him by the servants unless Night Sorrow was present. Night Sorrow understood that this was a matter of trust. Tianyu only trusted himself. Tianyu didn't trust anyone else. The days were peaceful. After a month in the bamboo hut, Night Sorrow's cultivation had reached the 5th layer of qi refining and the myriad Tao treasured tome had reached the 2nd layer of blood refining for 6 or 7 days. When the myriad Tao treasured tome reached the 2nd layer of blood refining, Night Sorrow had also reached the entry level of the wind-chasing spear art. His black spear was like a black flood dragon waving around. Damn! Little 13, why are you so fierce? Is this the spear art you're cultivating? While Night Sorrow was cultivating, Tang Tian and Chu Ning appeared. Seeing Night Sorrow's swift and fierce spear art, the 2 of them were very surprised. Their sword art and spear art were both rank 1, so their starting point was lower than the wind-chasing spear art. Senior brothers, you're here. I have tea and wine here. What would you like to drink? Night Sorrow stopped cultivating and wiped the sweat off his face with a towel. Tea and wine. Martial Uncle Gong is too biased. We don't have either of those. Chu Ning said with a bitter face. Hee, this isn't from Martial Uncle. I asked someone else to buy it for me, Night Sorrow said with a smile. Tang Tian sat down and said, 5th level of qi refining. 13, are you trying to kill us? If you cultivate too fast, Uncle Master will teach us a lesson. Don't just talk. Where's the wine? When Night Sorrow entered the 4th level of qi refining some time ago, Gong Xian went to scold Tang Tian and Chu Ning. Now that Night Sorrow entered the 5th level of qi refining, Tang Tian and Chu Ning understood that once Gong Xian found out, he would use this matter to lecture them. Senior brothers, how come you have the time to come here? Yishan asked after pouring each of them a bowl with a jar of wine in hand. 2 days ago, Martial Uncle said that you have a fierce white bird here. Today, after cultivating, we came to take a look. Tang Tian said as he drank the wine that Night Sorrow handed over. You're talking about Tianyu. It went out to hunt. Night Sorrow said with a smile. Just as the 3 of them were chatting and drinking, Gong Xian appeared. In Night Sorrow's impression, Gong Xian always had a smile on his face and was very amiable. However, this time, he appeared with a dark expression. "You two bastards. Instead of cultivating, you came here to drink wine. Do you want to enter the myriad beasts forest? If you want to enter, I'll fulfill your wish right now." Gong Xian roared at Tang Tian and Chu Ning as he entered the courtyard. "Martial uncle. We were wrong. We'll go back and cultivate now." Chu Ning, who was frightened by Gong Xian's appearance, poured the entire bowl of wine down his neck. "Wait a minute. There's something I need to tell you. In 2 months, our Taishan Peak will open the Spirit Gathering Array. At that time, the 3 of you and a few others will have to go in. If the 3 of you embarrass me, then if there's nothing else, all of you will go to the Myriad Beasts Forest." Gong Xian left after saying that. "Martial uncle has such a fierce side. I always thought that he was very refined." Night Sorrow said with some astonishment. "Refined? Little 13, you actually said that martial uncle is refined. Look at this." Tang Tian turned around and pulled down his pants. There was a black mark on his buttocks. Before Night Sorrow could ask what happened, Tang Tian told him himself. 2 days ago, he was tired from cultivating and fell asleep on the chair for a while. Gong Xian caught him and directly fried his meat with rattan. Chu Ning also showed the mark on his body. He pulled up his pants. There were also red marks on his calves. Night Sorrow knew that it was also the result of fried meat with rattan. "Do you know what a spirit gathering array is?" Night Sorrow asked. "I do know about this. Every peak in the Medicine Valley has a spirit gathering array. If you cultivate in the spirit gathering array, your cultivation will increase several times faster than outside. However, it can only be open for 1 month every year. After all, it costs spirit stones to open the spirit gathering array." Chu Ning said. "Going in means cultivating. How is it embarrassing?" Night Sorrow was a little confused. "Idiot, it's not only us who are going in. Nangong Yi and the rest are going in too. If the 3 of us don't cultivate as fast as them, martial uncle will feel embarrassed. It's really miserable to follow this black-faced martial uncle. Even entering the spirit gathering array requires him to fight for face. Won't the sect competition be even worse?" Tang Tian said bitterly. Night Sorrow knew that the sect competition was a competition between disciples of the same sect. It was divided into several levels. There were 3 levels: newcomer competition, inner sect domination, and core competition. The newcomer competition was not only for newcomers, but also for all outer sect disciples. Those who were ranked would receive rewards from the sect, and their cultivation resources would also increase. However, Night Sorrow did not have high hopes for this sect competition. He remembered that there were 2 people who participated in the competition who were at Qi Refining Stage 9, and there were many who were at Qi Refining Stage 8. In addition, the outer sect disciples of the Medicine Valley were not to be trifled with. After staying at Night Sorrow's place for a while, Tang Tian and Chu Ning left. The 2 of them were afraid of Gong Xian's torture and were worried that Gong Xian would teach them a lesson. However, Night Sorrow felt that Gong Xian was not that fierce. Carrot forever carrot free. Read novels. After drinking 2 mouthfuls of wine, Night Sorrow continued to cultivate the chasing wind spear art. This was the only battle technique that Night Sorrow currently had. With the last strike, Night Sorrow shattered a huge rock at the side of the courtyard. Night Sorrow was very satisfied with the power of this strike. He believed that as his cultivation increased, the power of the chasing wind spear art would become even stronger. While Night Sorrow was cleaning his spear, Tianyu came back with a brown bear in his claws. The brown bear's head had been cracked by Tianyu's claw. After throwing the brown bear outside the courtyard, Tianyu landed beside Night Sorrow and waited for Night Sorrow to comb his feathers. While Night Sorrow was combing Tianyu's feathers, two odd-job disciples came over. They did not have to bring prey every day when they came over. Tianyu prepared the prey himself and they were responsible for roasting it. Nowadays, Tianyu did not eat raw food. After roasting the brown bear with the two odd-job disciples and feeding Tianyu, Night Sorrow entered the bamboo house. After entering the bamboo house, Night Sorrow took out the elixirs in his storage ring on a whim and organized them. Originally, Night Sorrow wanted to see if there were any energy cultivation pills. However, now that he was cultivating the sacred cauldron scripture and the myriad Tao tome, he did not have enough energy cultivation pills. Chapter 27. After checking, Night Sorrow felt helpless. It was not that Feng Chen's ring did not have any pills, but it did not have any low-grade pills. The lowest grade pill was the soul condensing pill, which was a tier 3 pill. However, Night Sorrow found a pill that was more suitable for him, the blood essence pill. It was a pill that could strengthen the body. After thinking for a while, Night Sorrow took out a soul condensing pill. He crushed it and swallowed half of it before starting to cultivate. He wanted to see if he could use it. As the pill entered his stomach, energy was produced. The soul condensing pill was several times more violent than the energy cultivating pill. Night Sorrow quickly circulated the Holy Cauldron scripture and the myriad Tao treasured book, absorbing the energy of the soul condensing pill at full speed. Night Sorrow's body was like a raging sea. He had underestimated the soul condensing pill. If others found out that a tier 1 cultivator used a tier 3 pill, they would be scared to death. Although his internal organs were shaken and a few drops of blood flowed from the corner of his mouth, Night Sorrow was still able to withstand the impact of the soul-condensing pill. 4 hours later, Yi Shang had converted this half of the soul-solidifying pill into energy in his true qi and flesh. Opening his eyes, he wiped the blood from the corner of his mouth. Looking at the remaining half of the soul-condensing pill in his hand, Night Sorrow was a little scared. He had only eaten half of the pill. If he had eaten the entire pill, his dantian would have exploded. Yi Shang strolled around the courtyard twice to ease his mood. Then, he returned to the bamboo hut and took out a blood essence pill to eat. The blood essence pill was not as violent as the soul-condensing pill. Night Sorrow circulated the Holy Cauldron scripture and the myriad Tao treasured book at the same time. #BAS Night Sorrow cultivated, he found that the blood essence pill did not help much with the Holy Cauldron scripture. Instead, it helped a lot with the myriad Tao treasured book. Following Night Sorrow's absorption of heaven and earth spiritual qi, it entered Night Sorrow's body and slowly circulated. Night Sorrow refined the blood essence pill for an entire night. However, the effect was obvious. Night Sorrow's myriad Tao treasured book had reached the bottleneck of the second layer. After stretching his body, Night Sorrow walked out of the bamboo house and took a bath behind it. Standing in the cold stream, Night Sorrow pondered. He felt that he should use both the essence condensation pill and the blood essence pill at the same time. This way, both the sacred cauldron scripture and the myriad Tao tome would make the greatest progress. After taking a shower, Night Sorrow returned to the bamboo house and saw Yu Yangyu. Yu Yangyu, dressed in a black robe, stood in the courtyard, facing Tianyu's various attacks. "Tianyu, stop!" Night Sorrow shouted anxiously. He was worried that Yu Yangyu would get angry and hurt Tianyu. Tianyu, who was preparing to attack again in the air, heard Night Sorrow's voice and landed beside Night Sorrow. What an amazing guy. He has the bloodline of the ancient Green Peng and Black Huan. When he grows up, his combat strength will be extremely strong. Yu Yangyu looked at Tianyu and explained his origin. Peak Master is here. Night Sorrow bowed and greeted him. Qi refining level 5. Looks like you have been working hard for the past month. Your body is full of vitality. Have you cultivated other techniques? Yu Yongyu frowned as he looked at Night Sorrow. He could see Night Sorrow's situation at a glance. Yes, disciple has also cultivated a technique that strengthens the body. Night Sorrow nodded. Very good. Although qi is the foundation of a cultivator, the strength of the body is also very important. I heard from Gong Xian that you have reached the entry level of the chasing wind spear art. Show it to me. Yu Yongyu sat on a bamboo chair in the courtyard and said. Night Sorrow nodded at Yu Yongyu and had Tianyu move aside. He took out the black iron spear from his back and used the chasing wind spear art with a shake of his arms. With the increase in strength of Night Sorrow's body, the strength of his arms reached 2000 jin. This made the chasing wind spear art very prominent. When the black iron spear was waved, there was a whistling sound as it pierced through the air. When Night Sorrow stabbed out with his spear, the tip of the spear trembled and let out a hissing sound. Qi refining level 5. Relying on the strength of your body, you have actually grasped the key points of the chasing wind spear art. This is very rare. Techniques are dead, but people are alive. I remember that there was once a spear master who used a technique called the star-shattering spear. It was very powerful, and the star-shattering spear relied on the power of vibration. After Yu Yongyu finished speaking, he punched the bamboo in the courtyard. This punch was very slow, as if it was slowly sticking to the bamboo. However, the moment his fist touched the bamboo, the part of the bamboo that was touched directly turned into powder. This disciple understands. Night Sorrow's face was full of shock. This kind of attack was too shocking. All roads are created by people. All battle skills are created by cultivators. Only by constantly exploring can one walk in front of others. You just need to feel this power of vibration. As for whether it is correct or not, and whether it conflicts with the chasing wind spear art, you can feel it for yourself. Yu Yongyu nodded and said. Night Sorrow lowered his head in thought. He was considering whether or not to give the Holy Cauldron scripture to Yu Yongyu. After thinking for a while, Night Sorrow raised his head and reached into his chest. At the same time, he thought of something and took the Holy Cauldron scripture out of his storage ring. He then took 2 steps forward and handed the Holy Cauldron scripture to Yu Yongyu. Night Sorrow did this to hide the storage ring. What is this? Yu Yongyu did not suspect anything and took the Holy Cauldron scripture. When his eyes swept across the cover of the Holy Cauldron scripture, Yu Yongyu's face changed. At the same time, he stood up from his chair and flipped through the ancient book with trembling fingers. He looked at it for 15 minutes. This is the Holy Cauldron scripture, the original copy of the Holy Cauldron scripture. What do you plan to do with it? Yu Yongyu looked very excited. This was the inheritance of the Medicine Valley that had been lost for countless years. With the Holy Cauldron scripture, the rise of the Medicine Valley was only a matter of time. After hearing Yu Yongyu's words, Night Sorrow felt that it was right to give the Holy Cauldron scripture to Yu Yongyu. He did not ask where it came from. Instead, he asked how he would deal with it. This meant that Yu Yongyu did not covet the benefits that the Medicine Valley would give to the person who found the ancient book. Peak Master, you can deal with it as you see fit. Night Sorrow handed the problem over to Yu Yongyu. You are smart. The Holy Cauldron scripture must be handed over to the sect. It is not appropriate to hand it over now. You have a low status and won't get any benefits. Just leave it with me and hand it over to the sect when you become a core disciple. Yu Yongyu thought for a while and made a decision. It's all up to you. Night Sorrow did not expect that Yu Yongyu would think so far ahead for his own sake. Have you made a copy of it? Although you have to hand it over, you also have the right to cultivate it first. Yu Yongyu looked at Night Sorrow and asked with a smile. I haven't copied it, but I remember it. Night Sorrow nodded and answered honestly. Well, honest but not pedantic. You did the right thing. But this is not safe. I will make a copy for you in 2 days. But you have to remember that you can't leak it out. You can't leak it to anyone. Speaking of this, Yu Yangyu's face became more serious. This was the inheritance of the Medicine Valley. It was a matter of principle. I understand. Knight Sorrow nodded. Chapter 28. Stroking the black iron spear, Knight Sorrow felt very conflicted. He really didn't want to replace the black iron spear, but as his cultivation and strength increased, he would have to give it up sooner or later. Extreme love, extreme swordsmanship. This sentence is applicable to martial artists. Treat the weapon in your hand seriously, it is your most loyal partner. How about this, give the spear to me, and I'll find someone to help you add some materials and reforge it. Also, do you have any other requests? You've contributed a lot to the sect. Although you can't hand over the Holy Cauldron scripture for now, I can still fulfill some of your requests. Yu Yangyu looked at Knight Sorrow with appreciation. I don't have any requests for now. Knight Sorrow shook his head and said. There's no need to cultivate some random battle skills. When you reach the element gathering realm, you can cultivate my heaven shaking hand. Gong Xian and the others don't have strong enough bodies, but you should be able to. Yu Yangyu said. Thank you for taking care of me, Peak Master. Then I'll give you another big gift. Knight Sorrow reached into his chest and took out the heaven-covering hand manual like last time, and handed it to Yu Yangyu. Holding the heaven-covering hand manual, Yu Yangyu's face turned red, and his hands trembled. God is kind to me. I actually got this manual when I reached the bottleneck of the heaven-shaking hand. Knight Sorrow, Yu Yangyu, owe you a favor. Yu Yangyu looked at Knight Sorrow seriously. You're too kind, Peak Master. Knight Sorrow was very calm. He remembered both the Holy Cauldron scripture and the heaven-covering hand manual. The Holy Cauldron scripture had to be returned to the Medicine Valley. The heaven-covering hand manual was just to fulfill his wish. It was also based on Yu Yangyu's integrity and sincerity. Okay, work hard. Yu Yangyu put away the manual. When Yu Yangyu put away the ancient book, Knight Sorrow discovered that Yu Yangyu was using a storage ring. After Yu Yangyu left, Knight Sorrow accompanied him to the entrance of the courtyard. By the way, remember not to reveal your wealth in the future. Eating meat in silence is the way of the king. Yu Yangyu turned around and reminded Knight Sorrow after taking a few steps. After Yu Yangyu left, Knight Sorrow took a pill and continued to cultivate. When they arrived at Gong Xian's residence, Yu Yangyu immediately called for Gong Xian to serve wine. Master, why are you so happy? Is little 13 doing well? Gong Xian took out a jar of wine, opened it, and poured a bowl for Yu Yangyu. Very well. It's not easy for someone at the 5th level of Qi refining to successfully cultivate a rank 2 combat skill. His demonic beast is also extraordinary. Pass down the Taishian order and ask the disciplinary elders to protect Knight Sorrow's safety, Yu Yangyu said after drinking a bowl of wine. Yong Si, Jiu read little hh say 2-inch Taishian order. Master, isn't this a little too serious? Gong Xian said with some surprise. It's not serious at all. There are some things you'll know later, Yu Yangyu said. Then disciple will arrange it in a moment. After hearing Yu Yangyu's words, Gong Xian didn't ask any more questions. He didn't expect Yu Yangyu to value Knight Sorrow so much. Gong Xian was the eldest disciple of Taishian Peak. He could make decisions on the Taishian Peak, but there was one place he couldn't, and that was the Taishian Law Enforcement Hall. That place only recognized the Peak Master and his Taishian order. The 3 people assigned to you are all good seedlings. Take Tang Tian and Chu Ning as disciples later, Yu Yangyu said. Master, who should I give little 13 to? That disciple has to stay too. After hearing Yu Yangyu's words, Gong Xian became anxious. He knew that Night Sorrow had the greatest potential, and he didn't want his junior brother and sister to steal him away. Don't think about that. He can cultivate the heaven-shaking hand. Can you teach him? Yu Yangyu glanced at Gong Xian and asked. Ah. Then disciple will have another junior brother. After hearing Yu Yangyu's words, Gong Xian understood that Yu Yangyu had taken a liking to him. We'll talk about this later. Let Night Sorrow cultivate on his own. Don't worry about him. He's a good seedling. After giving another instruction, Yu Yangyu left. Gong Xian was a little depressed. He had planned to talk to Yu Yangyu about accepting Night Sorrow, Chu Ning, and Tang Tian as disciples, but now Night Sorrow's plan was ruined. However, he was very satisfied with Chu Ning and Tang Tian. After Yu Yangyu left, Night Sorrow ate a blood essence pill and began cultivating. He didn't cultivate the sacred cauldron scripture. He cultivated the myriad Tao treasured tome to the peak of the second level of the blood refining realm and was about to break through today. As the blood essence pill took effect, Night Sorrow's blood rapidly surged. After surging to a limit, the energy in his blood entered his muscles. Night Sorrow controlled the energy to flow through his muscles and then rushed to the back of his neck. With a muffled sound, the muscles on the back of Night Sorrow's neck trembled twice. The muscles were filled with energy. This was called the dragon's neck in the myriad Tao treasured tome. Cultivating it was the symbol of the third level of the blood refining realm. After opening the dragon's neck, Night Sorrow was delighted. After entering the third level of the blood refining realm, his body's strength would increase again. After cultivating for another hour, Night Sorrow finished and walked out of the bamboo house. Night Sorrow really wanted to cultivate the chasing wind spear art, but he didn't have a spear, so he could only use his fists. Walking to a pine tree outside the courtyard that was as thick as a human head, Night Sorrow ferociously punched. Gotcha! As Night Sorrow's fist landed, the pine tree was broken in half. Withdrawing his fist, Night Sorrow spat out a mouthful of air. He felt that his fist contained at least 3,000 Jin of force. Following that, Night Sorrow punched and kicked, destroying the pine tree. Even the tree stump was broken by Night Sorrow's kicks. Yi Shang thought for a moment. Heaven Covering Hand was a rank 2 combat skill that could be cultivated. His body was strong enough, so could he try cultivating it? The Chasing Wind Spear art was a rank 2 battle skill, but he also cultivated it. With this idea in mind, Night Sorrow began to think about the Heaven Covering Hand's cultivation method. The first level of the Heaven Covering Hand was the Jinyu hand. The main point of cultivating it was to pour the Jin Qi from the Dantian into the hands and form a cyclone. This way, the opponent would be under a lot of pressure, and the attack power would also increase. The difficulty and key to cultivating it was the need for a strong body. If the body wasn't strong enough, then the hands and arms wouldn't be able to withstand a large amount of Jin Qi and form a cyclone. Sitting cross-legged in the courtyard, Night Sorrow circulated the Jin Qi from his Dantian and poured it into his arms. Following the circulation of the Jin Qi from Night Sorrow's Dantian, all the Jin Qi was poured into Night Sorrow's arms, and then from his arms to his hands. This was a situation that wasn't recorded in the ancient books. The ancient books said that the key to cultivating it was the endurance of the arms and hands. If the arms and hands couldn't withstand the Jin Qi from the Dantian, then it would be easy for the body to explode. However, Night Sorrow's Jin Qi from his Dantian went through his arms and into his hands. There was no pressure on his hands, but the cyclone didn't appear. After guiding the Jin Qi back into his Dantian and standing up, Night Sorrow paced back and forth in the courtyard, thinking. After a while, Night Sorrow came to a conclusion. Other people's difficulty in cultivating the Heaven Covering Hand was that the body wasn't strong enough. His current state should be strong enough, but the Jin Qi in his Dantian wasn't enough. Stopping, Night Sorrow thought for a while and decided to try cultivating one hand first. If the Jin Qi in both hands wasn't enough, then what about one hand? Having made his decision, Night Sorrow sat down cross-legged, raised his left hand in front of his chest, and then stretched it out. This was the process of accumulating qi. Night Sorrow decided to use his right hand to wield a weapon, and use his left hand to cultivate the heaven-covering hand. In terms of the use of resources, Night Sorrow was not stingy. Last time on the way to the Medicine Valley, he had figured it out. As long as his cultivation improved, he would not have to worry about lack of resources. Turning resources into strength was the most practical. Night Sorrow cultivated by eating spirit congealing pills and blood essence pills. He also cultivated sacred cauldron scripture and myriad Tao tome together. The blue-robed old man stopped on a thick branch of an ancient tree and meditated. After cultivating for a night, Night Sorrow went to the yard to cultivate heaven-covering hand. Without the black iron spear in his hand, Night Sorrow could only rely on cultivating heaven-covering hand to activate his muscles and bones. Seeing Night Sorrow smashing a bamboo as thick as a human head with one palm, the blue-robed old man's eyes twitched. Of course, he knew what Night Sorrow was cultivating. It was the unique skill of the Peak Lord, Yu Yang Yu. At this time, he understood why he received the Tai Xian order to protect this little guy who was only at the 5th level of Qi refining. No one in the Medicine Valley could cultivate the extremely difficult Rank 2 combat skill at the 5th level of Qi refining. After cultivating the heaven-covering hand with innate Qi, Night Sorrow went to cultivate the heaven-covering hand in the form of body energy, but he did not practice it. When Night Sorrow finished cultivating, Tianyu also came back. This time, Tianyu brought back a big guy, which was a black python nearly as thick as a person's waist and 2 or 3 feet long. The black python was still alive. Tianyu bit the black python's neck with his sharp beak, grabbed the black python's body with his pair of sharp claws, and landed directly in front of the yard. Landing in front of the yard, Tianyu chirped twice to Night Sorrow as if he was presenting a treasure. When Tianyu chirped, the black python, which was out of Tianyu's control, twisted its body and ran away at an extremely fast speed. Translator, Endless Fantasy Translation Editor, Endless Fantasy Translation. This made Tianyu angry. His pair of golden eyes emitted 2 rays of fierce light. He jumped up and pounced on the black python. His sharp claws cracked the head of the Rank 2 black python. Not bad, you can catch such a powerful prey. Remember not to provoke powerful prey in the future. Night Sorrow took a few steps forward and kicked the body of the black python, which weighed 300 or 400 pounds and was still twisting, far away. The green-robed elder sucked in a breath of cold air. Yesterday, he saw Tianyu, but because he was a little far away, he didn't pay attention and thought it was an ordinary flying beast. Today, he saw it clearly. Tianyu was also a second-rank demonic beast, but it was much stronger than ordinary second-rank demonic beasts. The other was Night Sorrow. Tianyu was abnormal, but Night Sorrow was even more abnormal. Yu Yang Yu took out a spear from his storage ring. Chapter 30. Yu Yang Yu tossed the spear to Night Sorrow with a smile on his face. Yi Sorrow reached out to take the spear. His hands suddenly sank, and then he exerted force with both hands to stabilize the spear. Heavy. Extremely heavy. Night Sorrow felt that the spear weighed at least 500 kilograms. However, he did not mind. Although it was a little strenuous, he understood that with the increase of the true qi in his dantian and the cultivation of the myriad Tao tome, it would not be a problem for him to control the spear. Isn't it a little heavy? This spear weighs 1,200 kilograms. I asked Elder Chen of the Merit Hall to reforge it with some materials, Yu Yangyu said. Hearing Yu Yangyu's words, Gong Xian's mouth twitched. Added some materials. He knew very well how much materials Yu Yangyu had used to forge this spear. He was even forced to contribute a piece of black gold. It's okay. Although it's a little difficult to use it now, I'll get used to it slowly, Knight Sorrow said as he waved the spear. It's good that you can use it, Yu Yangyu nodded. Peak Master, does this spear have a name? Knight Sorrow asked. He loved this spear too much. It was just forged today. How can it have a name? You are its owner. You can name it yourself, Yu Yangyu said as he looked at Knight Sorrow, who was caressing the spear. Reforging the black iron spear is equivalent to obtaining a new life. Let's call it reincarnation, Knight Sorrow said as he waved the spear behind him with his right hand. Reincarnation. Good name. Seems like it's destined. Do you know what material this spear is made of? It's reincarnation stone. Reincarnation stone is extremely rare. In the ancient records, it's regarded as a divine material for refining weapons. We don't know what's so special about it, but it's extremely hard. There's a piece in the Merit Hall, so we used it, Yu Yangyu said. Knight Sorrow bowed to Yu Yangyu. He understood that Yu Yangyu must have paid a lot for this spear. By the way, in a few days, Tang Tian and Chu Ning will become Gong Xian's disciples. What do you think? Yu Yangyu asked after pondering for a moment. Upon hearing this news, Knight Sorrow was stunned for a moment before shaking his head. Martial Uncle Gong didn't accept me because I didn't do well enough. I will work hard. Gong Xian felt like vomiting blood. In just over a month, his cultivation had risen by 2 levels, and he had even reached the entry stage of the wind-chasing spear art, a rank 2 battle skill, with his rank 1 cultivation. Was this not good enough? He really wanted to say, it's not that I don't want you, but that you've been reserved. You're unfazed. Very good. Work hard. There will be a day when you'll be able to see the sun. Yu Yangyu nodded to Knight Sorrow before leaving with Gong Xian. Master, Knight Sorrow is working very hard. You're making him even crazier. After leaving Knight Sorrow's bamboo hut, Gong Xian spoke up. It's good to bear more when you're young. That way, you'll be able to bear more in the future. Tai Tsang, you're here. Yu Yangyu turned his head to look at the forest. Big brother. The green-robed old man walked out of the forest and nodded to Yu Yangyu. Martial uncle, did the enforcement hall arrange for you to come? Gong Xian greeted the green-robed old man, Tai Tsang. It's rare for your master to use the Tai Xian order, so Martial uncle came to take a look. That kid is really hard-working. There's one more thing you might not know. He's already reached the entry stage of the Xinyu hand. Tai Tsang said. He and Yu Yangyu were sworn brothers, and also fellow disciples. His position in Taishan Peak was very high. What? He's really reached the entry stage of the Xinyu hand. Not only Gong Xian, but Yu Yangyu was also very shocked. Yes. I personally saw him use the Xinyu hand to shatter a jade bamboo. Tai Tsang nodded. Ha! This time, my Taishan Peak has really picked up a treasure. In the past, our Taishan Peak didn't participate in the sect competition. This time, we must get a good ranking. Yu Yangyu was very excited. Gong Xian, why didn't you take in such an excellent seedling? Tai Tsang had heard Yu Yangyu say that Chu Ning and Tang Tian had become Gong Xian's disciples. Martial uncle, it's not that I don't want to, but he's already been reserved. Otherwise, how could he cultivate the Xinyu hand? Gong Xian suddenly felt very bitter. Tai Tsang was stunned for a moment, then smiled. He was very shocked that Knight Sorrow had been reserved by Yu Yangyu, but he felt that it was normal. Who wouldn't want to have an excellent disciple to inherit their legacy? Tai Tsang, I'll have to trouble you this time. I don't know why this guy ran out a while ago, but he came back with a broken arm. Children don't know the depth of things, so they need to be taken care of. Yu Yangyu said to Tai Tsang. Big brother, what are you saying? He's been cultivating in seclusion for 20 years, but he still hasn't broken through the bottleneck. It just so happens that he wants to come out and take a breather. Tai Tsang said with a smile. Knight Sorrow stayed in front of the bamboo hut and used a rag to gently wipe the reincarnation spear. He loved this spear so much that he couldn't bear to part with it. First edition A. After wiping the reincarnation spear once, Knight Sorrow began to cultivate the chasing wind spear arts. The reincarnation spear was very heavy, but his cultivation level had increased to the 3rd level of blood refining. His arms were strong, and he could barely handle it. When the chasing wind spear arts was executed, it was swift and violent. The reincarnation spear was like a flood dragon. After cultivating once, Knight Sorrow remembered Yu Yangyu's words. He had to add his own understanding into the spear arts. First, Knight Sorrow considered the spiraling force. Before he poured his true qi into the reincarnation spear, he had to make his true qi rotate as fast as possible. After cultivating for an hour, Knight Sorrow felt that the results were not ideal. After his true qi entered the reincarnation spear, the rotation force was not obvious. At most, it added a penetrating force to the reincarnation spear. However, the reincarnation spear was already sharp enough. Next, Knight Sorrow studied the oscillating force. The Xinyu hand's cultivation required the true qi to form a whirlpool in the hand. When the true qi attacked the target, it would violently oscillate, which was why its power was astonishing. According to the cultivation method of the Xinyu hand, Knight Sorrow cultivated for more than 2 hours, but there was still no effect. The true qi could form a whirlpool in the hand, but not in the spear. Once the true qi left the body and entered the weapon, it would quickly dissipate. This made Knight Sorrow puzzled. In the end, he felt that if he wanted to stimulate the oscillating force, he didn't have to use the true qi whirlpool. He could let his true qi attack in waves, which would also create oscillations. Next, Knight Sorrow began to cultivate in this direction. The moment he attacked with the spear, he would control his true qi and transfer it into the spear. This cultivation method made Knight Sorrow feel that it was feasible. Although it was not as tyrannical as transferring all of his true qi at once, the oscillating force on the spear would give him an advantage when clashing with the opponent's weapon. In the following days, Knight Sorrow cultivated the sacred cauldron scripture and the myriad Tao tome at night. During the day, he cultivated the Xinyu hand and the chasing wind spear art. After a few days of cultivation, Knight Sorrow's chasing wind spear art had a change. The first wave of the spear art's attack required a very strong force. He used the energy in his body to complete it, and the true qi in his dantian to complete the oscillating force attack. Now, Knight Sorrow could only achieve 9 oscillations, mainly because his true qi was not deep enough. After 9 oscillations, the true qi in his dantian could not keep up. Tai Tsang, who was in charge of protecting Knight Sorrow, changed his location again and again. Because Knight Sorrow could not bear to destroy the bamboo in front of the bamboo house, he chose to cultivate his spear art in the forest in front of the bamboo house. Cultivating the Xinyu hand was not that bad, as its destructive power was not that great. Every time Knight Sorrow used the Xinyu hand, he had to restore the true qi in his dantian. Chapter 31. Knight Sorrow's destructive power after practicing the chasing wind spear art was astonishing. Trees as thick as a human head. When they were hit by Knight Sorrow's reincarnation spear, they were directly broken. They were not broken by the spear blade, but by the vibrations. Even if the trees were very thick, Night Sorrow's reincarnation spear would not directly break them. Instead, a bowl-sized hole would appear in the middle of the tree, filling the hole with wood fragments. Tai Tsang, who was secretly observing Night Sorrow's cultivation, had thoughts of snatching his disciple from Yu Yangyu. He had watched Night Sorrow change his chasing wind spear art bit by bit, and watched Night Sorrow's improvement bit by bit. Night Sorrow's current spear art could not be compared to the original chasing wind spear art. It was completely comparable to a Tier 3 battle skill. Night Sorrow's cultivation also increased very quickly. He was not far from the 6th level of the Qi refining realm and the 4th level of the blood refining realm. One day, when Night Sorrow finished his cultivation, Gong Xian came to invite Night Sorrow to attend Nangong Yi, Tang Tian, and Chu Ning's apprenticeship ceremony. Originally, Night Sorrow did not want to go, but when he heard the news, he felt a little disappointed. However, when he thought of his good friends Chu Ning and Tang Tian's apprenticeship ceremony, he felt that he should at least go and congratulate them. After cultivating for a night, Night Sorrow took a bath and changed into a clean set of robes. He carried the reincarnation spear on his back and went to Gong Xian's residence. At Gong Xian's residence, Night Sorrow saw Chu Ning and Tang Tian, who were also clean and tidy. Night Sorrow could not see their cultivation, but he could see that their condition was not bad. "Little 13, you're here. I was about to call you over." Chu Ning punched Yi Shang's shoulder. "How can I not attend your apprenticeship ceremony?" Night Sorrow said with a smile. 13, what are you saying? What do you mean by our apprenticeship ceremony? Don't tell me it's not yours. Tang Tian rolled his eyes. Yes, Uncle Master thinks that I'm still lacking a little. I still need to work harder, Night Sorrow said, but there was still a trace of disappointment in his eyes. Gong Xian was speechless. He had been attacked for no reason again. Or rather, it should be said that he had taken the bullet for his master. Uncle Master, Night Sorrow has worked very hard. When he came here, he was in the 3rd layer of Qi refining. Now he's at the peak of the 5th layer. Isn't that good enough? Tang Tian was slightly agitated. He knew that Night Sorrow did not have it easy, and seeing that Night Sorrow was not accepted as a disciple, he felt very upset. Thank you, Tang Tian. I believe that as long as I work hard, there will be a chance. Night Sorrow nodded at Tang Tian. I know, and I believe that. I just feel a little wronged for you. Tang Tian turned and wiped the corner of his eyes. Chu Ning also looked at Gong Xian strangely. What are you guys doing? You're acting as if I'm evil. I'm not going to take the blame. It's not that I don't want to accept 13, it's that there are people above who don't want me to accept 13. Do you guys understand now? Don't look at me like that. Gong Xian could not help but explode under Tang Tian and Chu Ning's strange gazes. There are people above who know little 13. Can they influence Martial Uncle's decision? Uncle Master, are you bowing down to evil? Tang Tian looked at Gong Xian and asked a series of questions. Tang Tian and Chu Ning still called him Uncle Master since they had not formally become his disciples. You guys don't have to ask anymore. There are some things that you will slowly find out. Come, let's go to the Tai Xian Hall. Gong Xian regretted it after he finished speaking. There was no need to explain Night Sorrow's matter to them. When they arrived at the hall, Night Sorrow realized that the Tai Xian Hall was very lively these days. There were many people in front of the hall, most of them middle-aged, and some of them were odd-job workers. Entering the hall, Night Sorrow saw that Yu Yangyu was sitting on a big chair in the middle, drinking tea. There were many people standing in 2 rows inside the hall. Nangong Dai, Nangong Yi, Ning Qing, Ning Er, and Night Sorrow's group of 10 people were all present. They were all standing behind the 2 rows of people. The person in front of them was the person who had taught them before, and was also Yu Yangyu's disciple. However, Knight Sorrow noticed that there were a few empty chairs. On both sides of Yu Yangyu, there were 5 chairs, with an old man sitting on the left, and the other chairs were empty. Gong Xian walked in front of Yu Yangyu, and after giving a salute to Yu Yangyu, he stood in the first position on the left, while Knight Sorrow, Chu Ning, and Tang Tian stood behind him. Those who should come have come, the others will not wait. Gong Xian, you tell them about the Taishan Peak. Yu Yangyu raised his chin towards Gong Xian. Gong Xian stood up, coughed, and began to introduce the Taishan Peak. Taishan Peak currently had 3 generations of disciples, starting from the Peak Master, and 11 first-generation disciples. In addition to the Peak Master, there was also a Vice Peak Master, and 9 elders. This could be seen from the chairs beside Yu Yangyu, that there were a total of 11 chairs. There were 37 second-generation disciples, and these disciples were all disciples of the Peak Master, Vice Peak Master, and elders. Yu Yangyu had 11 disciples, and the eldest disciple was Gong Xian. Today, 10 disciples came, but the 11th disciple, Mo Qin, did not come. Gong Xian said that Mo Qin went out to gain experience. The middle-aged people outside the hall were all second-generation disciples of Taishan Peak. Today was not their day to accept disciples, so they could only watch the ceremony from outside, and the rest were servants who came to watch the fun. RVWSTRTR in the past, Taishan Peak had not accepted any new disciples, so there were no third-generation disciples. At this time, Yu Yangyu interrupted Gong Xian, and announced that Taishan Peak would be accepting new disciples, just like the other peaks. Sitting beside Yu Yangyu, Taizong said, "Big brother, didn't you say that it would be better to have no disciples than to have substandard ones? Didn't you think that Taishan Peak's current disciples would be enough?" Yu Yangyu said to Taizong, "Taizong, this was my view in the past. Facts have proven that this view was wrong. It's better to have more people. 1 in 10 people is a talent, so if we accept 100 third-generation disciples, we will have 10 good seedlings to use. Next time, the Peak Master's line will not accept new disciples, and you can divide them among yourselves." The people outside the hall all laughed. They were happy. In other peaks, the second-generation disciples were very old, and there were many disciples and grand-disciples under them. However, in Taishan Peak, the second-generation disciples were the youngest. Of course, the servants were not counted. Yu Yangyu announced that Taishan Peak was accepting new disciples, so they were not the youngest anymore. "Big brother, it should have been like this long ago. Our Taishan Peak is the most deserted," Taizong said. "It's not too late. Even if we don't accept third-generation disciples, which peak dares to look down on our Taishan Peak?" Yu Yangyu's face was full of confidence. Taishan Peak had few disciples, but every one of them was strong. This was recognized in the Medicine Valley. Then, Gong Xian began to announce the sex rules. The first rule: disciples in the peak are not allowed to kill each other. The second rule: do not do evil. The third rule: do not betray the sect, and do not disobey the teachers. Knight Sorrow wanted to listen to a long speech, but that was it. Gong Xian announced the 3 rules, which surprised Knight Sorrow and the others. Yes, our Taishan Peak only has these 3 rules. If anyone violates these 3 rules, the Taishan Peak itself will clean up the sect, Yu Yangyu said with a cold face. "Peak Master, during the examination ceremony last time, someone attacked Knight Sorrow. How should we deal with such a thing? If we can't kill each other, do we just tolerate it?" The tall and strong man, who was a little dazed, asked. Chapter 32. Brat, don't you understand? The disciples of the peak are not allowed to kill each other. If the disciples of other peaks provoke us, we will fight them back. If necessary, we will kill them. The bearded man in front of Ma Shizhuang glared at him and said. Hearing this man's words, Night Sorrow and the others were stunned. No wonder the Taishan peak was so strong. The rules were indeed ruthless and unique. Yes, when dealing with outsiders, we have to put the interests of the sect first. Yu Yangyu nodded and said. Apparently, he had tacitly agreed with this statement. Next was the apprenticeship ceremony. Starting from Nangong Dai, she first went to the main hall and knelt in front of the ancestral statue. Then, she took the apprenticeship tea and gave it to Yu Yangyu's third disciple, Nan Nan. After drinking the apprenticeship tea, Nan Nan handed Nangong Dai a long sword as an apprenticeship gift. Then, he gave Nangong Dai a cyan jade token. That was the identity token of a third-generation disciple of the Medicine Valley's Taishan Peak. Next was Ning Chang's Ning Air. Like Nangong Dai, he first knelt in front of the ancestral statue and gave Yu Yangyu's seventh disciple, Zhou Zhang, tea. Similarly, Zhou Zhang gave Ning Ching a saber as an apprenticeship gift. Then, he also gave a cyan jade token. Next, the 12 people who came with Night Sorrow also knelt in front of their masters. Their masters also gave them apprenticeship gifts. Master, their apprenticeship ceremony is over, Gong Xian said to Yu Yangyu after Su Feng and Su Er finished their apprenticeship ceremony. At this time, Nangong Dai, Ning Qing, Ma Shizhuang, and the others all looked at Night Sorrow. They didn't understand. Night Sorrow had shown great perseverance during the apprenticeship ceremony in the Medicine Valley. In the past month, his cultivation had increased by 2 levels. But why didn't anyone accept Night Sorrow? Yes, the master leads the way, but the cultivation depends on the person. Although this is an old saying, it is very reasonable. I have given you the path, but how you walk it is your problem. Just now, I gave you 3 rules. I will add 1 more. It is better to bleed and lose your life than to bring shame to the name of the Taishan Peak. At this point, Yu Yangyu's eyes flashed with cold light. Disciple understands. Everyone bowed to receive the order. Yi Shan also bowed. After the ceremony, the third generation of disciples began to acknowledge their masters. Now, the main hall was filled with Yu Yangyu's direct disciples. According to this concept, the people in the main hall were the closest to him. Little 13, don't worry. You are the youngest. When you are older, your master will accept you. Nangong Dai, who was standing behind Yu Yangyu's third disciple, Nan Anan, tried to persuade Night Sorrow when she saw that he didn't speak. Night Sorrow's performance during the apprenticeship ceremony in the Medicine Valley had convinced Nangong Dai and the others. Night Sorrow, who had suffered the most during the ceremony, had suffered another blow today. This made Nangong Dai feel bad. Thank you. Night Sorrow nodded to Nangong Dai. That's right. 13, you are the best. Ma Shizhuang also said. I think so too. 13, you are the best. Tang Tian, who was standing beside Night Sorrow, also said. Slap. Gong Xian turned around and slapped the back of Tang Tian's head. 13 doesn't need you to comment. Mind your own business. Master, I am speaking the truth. If you have good eyesight, you shouldn't have given up on 13. Tang Tian said with some dissatisfaction. Big brother, if you don't announce it, I will have to snatch him. Tai Tsang, who had been silent all this while, said with a smile. Forever free T1 read unspecified currency / novel. Alright, your apprenticeship ceremony is over. I will announce one more thing. I have decided to accept another disciple. My final disciple will also be my last disciple. Night Sorrow, are you willing to accept me as your master and become my disciple? Yu Yangyu stood up and said to Night Sorrow. Yu Yangyu's words were like thunder. Originally, everyone pitied Night Sorrow. Who would have thought that Yu Yangyu would accept Night Sorrow as his disciple? Replying to Peak Master, Night Sorrow does not need pity or charity. He is not worthy to be a disciple of Taishian Peak. Now that everyone does not acknowledge me, I will work hard until everyone acknowledges me. Night Sorrow bowed to Yu Yangyu. He had his own pride and unyielding character. He did not need charity from others. Night Sorrow's words stunned Yu Yangyu. At the same time, the hall quieted down. They did not expect Night Sorrow to give such an answer. At the same time, they understood that Night Sorrow's calm face hid a proud heart. Well said. Night Sorrow, I did not accept you as my disciple out of charity. I have observed you for many days. I have seen you practice the wind-chasing spear technique and the mountain-crushing palm. I truly felt that you were suitable to inherit my legacy. The facts have proven that I was not wrong. Cultivation, foundation, and even talent can be changed. However, the strength of one's heart is innate. This is also the temperament of an expert. Yu Yangyu was very excited. Night Sorrow's words had touched the bottom of his heart. Little 13, what are you waiting for? Hurry up and serve the tea. Gong Xian reached out and pushed Night Sorrow in front of the servant who was holding the tea. After a moment of hesitation, Night Sorrow took the tea from the servant's tray. He did not worship the statue and directly went to Yu Yangyu. He then knelt down on one knee. Disciple does not come from a good background. My talent is limited. However, I will work hard and will not disappoint Master. Good. You are my 13th disciple, and also my last one. Yu Yangyu raised the tea and drank it in one gulp. I'm not going to give you a gift for becoming my disciple. I just have a few words for you. Don't be pleased by external gains, and don't be saddened by personal gains. What others give you is never as good as what you have. True strength is true strength, Lu Yangyu said as he helped Yishang up. Yu Yangyu originally had 12 disciples. However, his 12th disciple died prematurely. When his 12th disciple went out to train, he was besieged by a small sect. In the end, he died in battle. In a fit of anger, Yu Yangyu annihilated the small sect. Therefore, Night Sorrow was still ranked 13th. Tang Tian, you can't call me little 13 anymore. You have to call me 13th uncle. Gong Xian turned around and slapped Tang Tian again. Because of Night Sorrow, Tang Tian looked at him with disdain. 13th uncle. I have to call him 13th uncle. Tang Tian was stuttering, the situation had changed too suddenly, and he had not reacted to it yet. Nonsense. He is your Grandmaster's 13th disciple. He is Master's junior. Don't you think he is your 13th uncle? Gong Xian glared at Tang Tian. 13th uncle. Tang Tian shouted shyly. Chu Ning could not help but laugh. In the end, he held it back. And you? Chu Ning did not dodge and was slapped on the back of his head by Gong Xian. Chu Ning could only step forward and greet Night Sorrow. 13th uncle, this is your identity token. Later, you can go to Taishian Resource Hall to receive a storage belt. Yu Yangyu handed Night Sorrow a jade token that represented his identity as a disciple of Medicine Valley. At the same time, he also gave Night Sorrow and the others a special treatment. Night Sorrow's identity token was a black jade token. It was different from Tang Tian and the others. The black one was for a second-generation disciple, while the green one was for a third-generation disciple. Chapter 33. 13. Let me formally introduce myself. My name is Gong Xian. I am Master's #1 disciple and also your senior brother. Gong Xian formally introduced himself to Night Sorrow. Night Sorrow greets senior brother. Night Sorrow cupped his fists towards Gong Xian. After Night Sorrow's greeting, it was Nan Gong Dai and the others turned to greet their martial uncle, Gong Xian. After Gong Xian introduced himself, it was time for Yu Yangyu's other disciples to introduce themselves. Yu Yangyu's disciples were first disciple Gong Xian, second disciple Wu Qi, third disciple Nan Nan, fourth disciple Huang'an, fifth disciple Lu Peng, sixth disciple Aoi, seventh disciple Zhou Zheng, eighth disciple Shi Tianlin, ninth disciple Yang Lei, 10th disciple Tao Yuan, and 11th disciple Amo Qin. The 12th disciple had already passed away. The 13th disciple was Night Sorrow. 6th disciple Aoi and 9th disciple Yang Lei were both female and their martial aunts. Night Sorrow, this is your martial uncle. He is also Master's sworn brother. We grew up together and later entered the Medicine Valley together. He is now the law-enforcing elder of Taishan Peak. Yu Yangyu introduced Taitsang to Night Sorrow. Disciple Night Sorrow greets martial uncle. Night Sorrow bowed to Taitsang. Ha! Your master didn't give you a gift, but martial uncle will. I saw that you have a flying beast by your side, so martial uncle will give you a beast taming space. A sky-blue crystal appeared in Taitsang's hand. Taitsang, this is too precious. Night Sorrow is still young. He will get into trouble because of his wealth. Taitsang frowned. It's fine. Who dares to steal my martial nephew's things? I will destroy his entire family. Taitsang glared. All right. Night Sorrow, your uncle master gave you something good. There are many cultivators who have tamed beasts, but those who have tamed beasts are few and far between. This means that you can bring your tamed beasts with you at all times, Yu Yangyu said. Night Sorrow thanks martial uncle. Night Sorrow did not stand on ceremony and took the beast taming crystal. You're not shy, I like it. Taitsang laughed and slapped Night Sorrow. Night Sorrow, do you want to follow me to Repose Cliff to train, or do you want to stay with your big senior? Yu Yangyu looked at Night Sorrow and asked. Night Sorrow pondered for a moment and said, I'm already used to being with eldest senior brother. If I have any questions about cultivation that I don't understand, I'll ask master. That's fine too. If you have any problems, just look for your senior brother. Yu Yangyu nodded and got up to leave. He knew that if he stayed here, his disciples and grand-disciples would not be able to communicate freely. Taitsang patted Night Sorrow's shoulder and left as well. Little 13, you're too cruel. Huanan looked at Night Sorrow and said with a smile. In addition, Taitsang often came to Night Sorrow's place to drink tea and ask about Night Sorrow's cultivation situation. In addition, he also helped Night Sorrow to recognize the beast taming space as its master. However, Taitsang told Night Sorrow that a highly intelligent Yao like Tianyu was different from other tamed beasts. Unless absolutely necessary, it was best not to put him into the tamed beast space. Growing in a natural environment was beneficial for Tianyu, and it would be beneficial for him to advance. After hearing Taitsang's words, Night Sorrow understood that beast taming had already lost its spirituality and wildness. There was no room for improvement. However, Tianyu's potential was enormous, completely different from beast taming. The only original version, the other V are all KO pirated V. With Taitsang's reminder, Night Sorrow let Tianyu go out to hunt for food as usual. In the blink of an eye, a month had passed. Night Sorrow's cultivation had reached the 6th layer of Qi refining and the myriad Dao Tome had reached the 4th layer of the blood refining realm. After reaching the 6th layer of Qi refining, Night Sorrow's Shinyu hand had become much smoother. Although he could only attack once, the power had increased a bit, and his Shin Qi had also become much smoother. Night Sorrow's greatest improvement was his wind-chasing spear technique. He had already become very proficient in controlling the vibrational force, and it could be said that he could use it freely. This made Tai Tsung, who had watched Night Sorrow cultivate, admire him. Adding new ideas to an already formed battle technique was not something an ordinary person could do. Battle techniques were all important inheritances. Although Night Sorrow's method was not as difficult as creating a battle technique, it was still very difficult. After another cultivation session, Night Sorrow saw Gong Xian arrive. Little 13, get ready. The spirit gathering formation will open tomorrow. Gong Xian said. I know. I'll have to trouble senior brother to make a trip. Night Sorrow is really sorry. Night Sorrow poured a cup of water for Gong Xian and said. It's no trouble at all. Really, didn't Master say that he would give each of you a storage belt? Today, I went to Tai Xian Hall to deal with some matters and found out that you didn't receive one. You don't even remember such an important thing. Here, I brought it for you. Gong Xian handed a storage belt to Night Sorrow. You're tuning into the Journey of the Soul YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.